Thousands of students gather in a large stadium for an important entrance exam. A man stands before the crowd and explains the extreme difficulty of the Hongji class. As the students move toward the testing area, Chengdu appears in the hallway. The surrounding students notice him and whisper about his 2-year absence. A group of 3 students blocks Chengdu's path. The leader puts his hand on Chengdu's shoulder and mocks him for returning after so much time away. Chengdu looks back calmly and tells the student to focus on his own exam. He then grabs the student's hand with a very strong grip. His friends quickly step in to stop a fight so they do not get disqualified. They pull the leader away and leave the area. Later, Chengdu sat at their desks in a large computer room to begin the written exam. The bully thinks about a plan to injure Chengdu during the upcoming test. Chengdu ignores him and focuses on his monitor. The screen asks for a brief history of the current world. Chengdu begins to type the answer. In the year 2842, an alien civilization invaded Earth. Humans fought back using nuclear weapons, which killed 5 billion people. Instead of dying from the radiation, the surviving humans began to evolve and break their physical limits. On the 27th of August 2860, all adults reached level 2. This event marked the start of the High Martial Calendar, warriors using fire and large swords to fight monsters. These figures established the New World Order. Chengdu finishes the remaining questions about world policies. He moves his mouse to the Submit Exam button and clicks it to finish the first part of the test. He sits at his desk and remembers his 2-year absence. Blue energy flames appear around his body as he explains that he was not in a coma. Instead, he had been entering a strange dimension that granted him spiritual power and a photographic memory. He stands up and leaves the exam hall to prepare for the martial arts portion of the test. He returns home and greets his father. As he walks inside, his sister picks up his dropped exam ticket from the floor and warns him to be more careful. Later, the family sits together at the dinner table. His father holds up a small bottle of vitality powder. He explains that he bought it to help boost Chengdu's scores for the Hongji class exam. Chengdu looks at the bottle and says he can pass without using it. His father places a hand on Chengdu's shoulder and tells him not to worry about the cost. He says the family will always find a way to make money to support his dream of becoming a martial artist. Chengdu slimes at his father and quietly agrees. In his room, he looks at the bottle of vitality powder. He thinks about how much money his father spent on it. He knows he must become a martial artist to keep his family safe. He sits on his bed and closes his eyes to meditate. A blue flame appears between his hands as he enters a deep sleep. He wakes up in a cold world made of ice and giant blue crystals. He stands in the snow holding a long sword. Every time he sleeps, he comes here to fight monsters. He explains the rules of this space. If the monsters destroy the crystal, he will stay in a coma for the next day. If he dies while fighting, he wakes up with more energy. Defending the crystal increases his spiritual power and makes his memory stronger. A blue screen appears in the air. It says the next wave of monsters will arrive in 30 seconds. Only the first victory of the night gives him rewards. Chengdu grips his sword as more monsters appear. He moves quickly and slashes through them with orange streaks of energy. Chengdu stands amidst the debris, his face covered in bruises and sweat. He calls out to open his status panel. A system screen appears, showing his current stats and progress. His life intensity is level 5.1, and his strength is 1,100 pounds. A warning message flashes, announcing that the 5th wave of monsters is arriving. A massive red dragon with glowing eyes appears and roars. It releases a powerful blast of fire from its mouth. Chengdu runs across the cracked ground to escape the flames. The dragon then strikes with a giant, sharp claw. Chengdu jumps into the air and narrowly dodges the attack as the claw slams into the earth. The dragon swings its tail and hits Chengdu while he is in the air. He crashes to the ground and rolls across the dirt. Chengdu realizes he has finally learned the monster's attack patterns after many previous deaths. He leaps toward the dragon's head and uses a special move called Light Sword Style, Breeze Under the Forest. The dragon roars in pain and enters a berserk state. Its body begins to glow with orange fire and sparks. Chengdu holds his arm and notes that he was careless, but is not badly hurt. The monster opens its mouth and roars again. Chengdu runs forward with his sword. He leaps over the red dragon's head as it tries to bite him. He quickly slides underneath the dragon's body to avoid a blast of fire. He notes that his smaller size gives him the advantage of agility. He jumps high into the air and spins his body. He brings his sword down in a powerful vertical strike. A bright blue beam of light follows the blade. The sword cuts deep into the dragon's head, causing blood to spray. The dragon collapses to the ground with a heavy thud, creating a cloud of dust and debris. Chengdu lands on the monster's back and stands over it. A system notification congratulating him for defending against 5 waves of monsters. He gains 1 level of mental power and receives a rare technique called the Void Immortal Visualization Method. Chengdu looks sweat-drenched and surprised as he realizes the value of the reward. He explains that this method allows a person to actively train their mental power. A new screen flashes a warning. It states that the next wave of monsters will arrive soon. Chengdu breathes out a puff of air and narrows his eyes. In the distance, a large group of 30 monsters emerges from the shadows. Chengdu notes that their power level is much higher than his own. He admits that he cannot pass this level yet. Back to his bedroom, Chengdu opens his eyes and wakes up from his sleep. He sits on his bed in a meditative pose. He decides to examine the visualization method reward. A glowing blue book appears in his hands. He is suddenly transported into a mental space where he stands on a glowing blue surface that ripples like water. A dark entity appears before him. The creature has multiple red eyes and a wide, toothy grin against a red and black background. Chengdu looks up at the giant as he realizes that gazing at this giant is the trial he must complete to train his mind. Back in the real world, Chengdu sits on his bed in a meditative pose. A bright blue aura surrounds his body as he focuses on the visualization. His sister opens the door and tells him that it is time to eat. She sees that his body has become very muscular. She asks if he was always this handsome. Chengdu smiles and ruffles her hair while she tells him to stop. After she leaves, Chengdu looks at his reflection in a mirror. He notices his physical changes and wonders if they are caused by the visualization method. He puts on his tracksuit and picks up his backpack. He tells his father and sister that he is leaving for the exam. He arrives at the Liang City No. 1 high school gymnasium for the next part of the exam. He stands on the basketball court and flexes his muscles. He feels that his body has improved because of the visualization method. The group of 3 students from before approaches him again. The leader mocks Chengdu for being at the bottom of the class rankings 2 years ago. Chengdu replies that he is still better than those who failed the written exam. One of the students becomes very angry and shouts at Chengdu. Chengdu smiles and tells them that if they cannot hear properly, they should not take the exam. The leader grits his teeth and looks furious at the insult. Chengdu tells the leader not to take the comment personally. Another student steps in and puts a hand on the leader's shoulder. He tells the group to stop arguing and focus on the upcoming assessment instead. Feng Rui walks away and shouts a final threat at Chengdu. Chengdu's friend looks terrified and grabs his arm. He warns Chengdu that Feng Rui is dangerous because his uncle is the dean of students. He explains that the dean leaked the exam questions to Feng Rui. Chengdu listens with a serious expression and realizes he must be careful. An announcement over the intercom says the martial arts assessment is starting. The test is divided into a strength test and a combat duel. The students form lines in the gymnasium. For the strength test, students must punch a large purple machine. The rules state that the student with the lowest score in each group will be eliminated. Chengdu looks up at a small camera drone floating above him. He pulls back his arm and clenches his fist. Feng Rui smiles and expresses confidence in his strength. The first group assessment begins. Feng Rui throws a powerful punch with red motion lines. He strikes the purple testing machine with a loud thud. His friends cheer and shout that he is too strong. They note that his strength has reached 1,400 jin. One of Feng Rui's friends looks smug and predicts that someone will be eliminated this round. A massive force hits the machine, creating a bright purple glow and a large impact. All the students in the gymnasium stop to look. Feng Rui looks confused and begins to sweat. He sees that Chengdu produced a force of 1,500 jin, despite having a life intensity of only 5.1. The other students whisper in surprise and wonder why Chengdu was not ranked in the top 50 last year. Chengdu's friend shouts and cheers with excitement. A proctor stands with his hand on his chin, thinking about Chengdu's high strength score. He asks an assistant for Chengdu's student file. The proctor reads that Chengdu has reached a high level in martial skills, despite being away from school for 2 years. He decides to watch the combat duel to see Chengdu's true power. In the afternoon, the students gather around a large, square combat stage. The proctor stands in the center of the ring holding a piece of paper. He calls out the names for the next combat duel. He announces that Chengdu will fight against Feng Rui. The other students in tracksuits watch and talk about the upcoming fight. Feng Rui tells Chengdu that raw strength is not enough to win a real battle. Chengdu reaches out and takes a practice sword from a rack. He looks back at Feng Rui and smiles. Feng Rui swings his staff with great speed, leaving trails of orange energy in the air. Chengdu holds his practice sword and blocks the heavy strikes. Then he leaps high into the air to avoid a sweep. He descends quickly and lands a powerful kick on Feng Rui's face. Feng Rui's head snaps back and he falls to the ground. He crouches on the floor. He shouts that he will be the one to enter the elite Hongji class. He charges forward and swings his staff with all his strength. A massive burst of orange energy explodes across the stage. Chengdu stands at the center of the light. Suddenly, Chengdu moves with incredible speed. He slashes through the orange energy with bright blue light from his sword. Feng Rui shouts at Chengdu and slams his staff down with great power. The impact shatters the ground and sends rocks into the air. Chengdu watches the attack and thinks that fighting people is different from fighting monsters. Feng Rui swings his staff again while surrounded by orange energy. Chengdu moves quickly and strikes back with his glowing sword. A large explosion of blue and orange light covers the stage. Chengdu appears behind Feng Rui with a blue trail of energy. Feng Rui looks terrified and sweats as the blue light hits him. He coughs up a large spray of blood and falls back. Feng Rui reaches behind his back to grab a hidden dagger from his waistband. Chengdu lands a series of fast strikes on Feng Rui. He finishes with a powerful punch to Feng Rui's face. The force of the blow sends Feng Rui flying across the stage. His friend's brother shouts with excitement at the victory. Other students whisper in disbelief and question how Chengdu became so strong. The teacher calls for the medical team, and 2 staff members carry Feng Rui away on a stretcher. The teacher then calls Chengdu over. He bows to the teacher and apologizes for using too much force during the fight. The teacher places a hand on Chengdu's shoulder and tells him that injuries are a normal part of combat. He advises Chengdu to go home and stretch after his hard work. The proctor tells an AI assistant to call the principal. Chengdu walks through a quiet hallway. He realizes his family will not be home for a while. He approaches a large white machine called a virtual combat capsule. He explains that the school provides these to all students for training. Inside, a user can fight virtual opponents of similar levels. He mentions that his rank is currently bronze. He has focused more on fighting monsters in the crystal space than in virtual combat. He thinks about Feng Rui and the potential trouble he may cause. He looks at the open capsule and describes the Blue Star Youth List. It is a global ranking of the strongest young martial artists. Chengdu sits down in the chair and prepares to train. He believes a high rank will help him enter the Hongji class through his own strength. Chengdu enters the virtual combat space. He wears a blue hoodie and has a pig head mask over his head as his avatar. He uses a digital keyboard to start a warm-up match. He stands alone in a white room. He holds a large sword and looks around for his opponent. A girl with purple hair drops from above. She tries to hit him from behind with a small blade. Chengdu quickly turns and blocks her attack with his sword. The girl smiles and says his reaction speed is good. She tells him that in real combat, people do not wait to say hello. He grips his sword and says he will not let her attack from behind again. The two begin to fight at high speed. Chengdu swings his sword and creates large blue arcs of light. The girl flips over his attacks to stay safe. Chengdu lunges forward for a powerful strike. He uses a move called the Pale Dragon Point Thrust and moves toward the girl with a bright blue light. The girl looks and asks him about the move he just used. She explains that martial arts moves should not be limited to specific forms. Chen realizes she is correct and begins to think about his own technique. He swings his sword and a purple light trail follows the blade. He wonders how the girl could recognize his skill level. The girl tells Chengdu not to get distracted. She moves with extreme speed and leaps over his head. The girl flips through the air and holds her small blade. She strikes Chengdu from above with a powerful blow. Chengdu is caught by surprise and struggles to react to her sudden attack. The screen shows that Chengdu has lost the match and 10 victory points. He stands in the virtual space and looks at a keyboard. He thinks about the 4 forms of the flowing light sword art. He realizes that the moves are similar to an assassin's style. He decides to test this new strategy in a real combat match. A new opponent appears in the arena. He is a very large, muscular man holding a heavy iron ball on a long chain. Chengdu looks worried and notices that the opponent has a weapon advantage. He charges forward with his sword. A bright blue trail of light follows his body. He uses a technique called painting the ground as a prison. Chengdu jumps and uses another move called golden prunes ringing to the heavens. The large man looks angry and yells at Chengdu. He pulls the heavy chain with both hands to move his weapon. The giant iron ball falls directly toward Chengdu. Chengdu looks at his opponent from behind his pig mask. He activates a move called Breeze in the forest. A massive explosion of blue energy fills the arena as the giant iron ball slams into the floor. Chengdu suddenly appears behind the large man. The man looks over his shoulder with a terrified expression. He asks how Chengdu moved so quickly. Chengdu raises his sword and uses the Pale Dragon Point Thrust. The screen announces that TSK Bear has won the match. Chengdu receives 10 victory points. He stands alone in the white room and looks down at his practice sword. He thinks about the move he just performed and questions the nature of sword skills. He thinks about the nature of combat. He realizes that a sword should be used with flexibility and calls it an undefined weapon. Several blue system screens appear in front of him. They show his flowing light sword art, improving from 89% to 90%. Chengdu repeatedly asks the system for more matches to deepen his understanding. He continues to fight and train for a long time. The virtual capsule opens with a hiss of steam. Chengdu sits in the chair, drenched in sweat. He looks exhausted and says that he is very hungry. Suddenly, the device on his wrist beeps. A blue system message appears, congratulating him for entering the top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth List. Chengdu looks surprised as he reads the notification. He asks the system to expand his ranking details. He is ranked 6,000. 219th on the global list, and 654th in his biosphere. Finally, the list shows that he is now ranked first in Liang City. Chengdu smiles and looks happy as he thinks about his rank. He says that his spot in the Hongji class is now safe. He walks toward the campus of Liang City No. 1 High School with his backpack. Feng Liguo, the dean of students and Feng Rui's uncle, stops him. He points his finger and yells at Chengdu for not greeting a teacher. Chengdu looks back and says hello calmly. The dean continues to point his finger and shouts about Chengdu's appearance. He asks what Chengdu is wearing. Chengdu looks down at him and says he is wearing his school uniform. In the background, other students begin to laugh at the dean. The dean turns and screams for them to be silent. The surrounding students whisper that the dean wants revenge because Feng Rui is still in the hospital. Some students say that Chengdu only won his match because he used banned drugs. Chengdu stands on the paved walkway while the dean continues to confront him. The dean swings a wooden stick at Chengdu. Chengdu leans back to avoid the strike. The dean looks very angry and shouts about school regulations. Chengdu asks the dean which rule he is breaking. The dean becomes more furious and swings the stick again. Chengdu reaches out and catches the stick in his hand. The dean screams that he will report Chengdu to the principal to have him expelled. A voice suddenly asks who is looking for them. Principal Li Mu and Mayor Wang Anquan walk toward the group. The dean quickly points his finger at Chengdu and tries to complain to the principal. The principal and the mayor ignore the dean's complaints. They walk directly to Chengdu. The mayor places his hand on Chengdu's shoulder and laughs. He announces that Chengdu is now ranked number 1 on the Liang City Youth List. He also reveals that Chengdu has entered the top 10,000 on the Global Blue Star Youth List. The dean and the surrounding students stare with their mouths open. They look shocked and terrified by the news. The dean collapses and sits on the ground. The principal asks Chengdu to follow them to a meeting room. Chengdu walks behind the principal and the mayor. The principal explains that Chengdu is being transferred to the Hongji class immediately. Inside the meeting room, 2 other students are introduced. Moret is the top student of the Hongji class, and Lu Bo is the second-ranked student in Liang City. The 3 students look at each other silently. They sit at a long table with the school officials. The principal speaks to the group. He explains that the top 3 students from 100 cities will participate in a competition. The event is called the 3-day 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament. It will be held at High City No. 1 High School. The principal explains that a level 15 martial artist will lead the team. The principal details the rewards for the top 10 finishers, including bonus points and cash prizes. Chengdu listens with a steady expression. The principal asks the 3 students if they are willing to participate. Moret raises a hand and asks why the competition does not use virtual combat capsules. The mayor explains that district leaders prefer real combat. He notes that students will wear special suits to balance their life intensity for fairness. Chengdu looks down and calculates his current strength. He determines that he has a high chance of reaching the top 3. The mayor drinks from a cup and tells the students not to feel overwhelmed. Chengdu raises his right hand and says he will participate. Lu Bo and Moret also agree to join. The mayor smiles and gestures with his hands while praising their courage. He tells them they will be notified of the departure time later. Chengdu walks out of the meeting room and closes the door. He thinks about his family and his desire to provide them with a better life. He clenches his hand and resolves to finish in the top 3 of the 100 Cities War. Chengdu walks into the Hongji classroom and notices that the desks do not have student names on them. He chooses a seat and sits down. A large student named Peng Hu approaches and slams his hand onto Chengdu's desk. Peng Hu has an arrogant expression and tells Chengdu to leave. Chengdu thinks to himself about how the student is trying to bully him. Suddenly, Moret appears behind them and places his hands on both of their shoulders. Moret tells Peng Hu that Chengdu is new and does not know the rules yet. Chengdu looks surprised and begins to sweat, realizing that Moret moved silently and has a much higher power level. Peng Hu looks at Moret, grumbles, and decides to leave Chengdu alone for now. Moret explains the rules of the Hongji class to Chengdu. He points to the desks where several chairs are stacked upside down. He explains that the bottom 10 students in the monthly seat ranking must stand during class for the next month. Moret smiles and tells Chengdu that he must now challenge another student for a seat. Chengdu looks back and asks if there are any other benefits to having a high rank. Moret sits down in a chair marked with the number 1. He explains that a higher seat ranking grants more resource subsidies for the month. Chengdu looks intrigued and narrows his eyes. He clenches his right hand into his left palm. He thinks to himself that since there are resources involved, he must secure the highest ranking possible. Chengdu stands in the combat room and raises his left hand while holding his sword in his right. He loudly announces that he wants to challenge the student, ranked 10th in the class. In the background, a group of students looks on with shocked faces. They whisper to each other about how a new student is challenging a top 10 position immediately. They note that Chengdu looks quiet, but acts with great arrogance. Even with good skills, Chengdu's life intensity is much lower than the other elite students, making a top 10 challenge seem impossible. Chengdu ignores the comments and walks forward. He thinks to himself that the resource reward for 10th place is 50% larger than the reward for 11th place. Chengdu grips his practice sword and looks ahead with a serious expression. He thinks about the rewards for winning the seat. Penghu laughs and holds a massive black hammer. He tells Chengdu not to regret his decision. Chengdu stands before the much larger student and asks if he is the 10th rank. Penghu confirms with a wide, toothy grin and tells Chengdu he is unlucky. The teacher tells Penghu to put on his protective gear and enter the arena. The teacher has a small smile, thinking to himself that Chengdu is being too impulsive and that losing would be a good learning experience for him. Both students walk into the center of the large combat arena. The match begins. Chengdu looks calm while Penghu smiles arrogantly. He shouts a taunt at our boy, but Chengdu stands still as blue energy swirls around his body. He tells Penghu they will see what happens. Penghu swings the massive hammer horizontally with great speed. He yells that Chengdu's reaction is too slow. In the background, other students watch with shock. They shout that the match is over. They believe Chengdu will lose because his life intensity level is lower than Penghu's. The teacher notices that Chengdu's life intensity has reached level 5.2. He thinks about how Chengdu was only at level 5.1 the day before. He wonders how Chengdu increased his power so quickly in one day. Penghu yells that he has won the match. He laughs loudly as he swings his hammer. The hammer hits the ground with a loud thud. Penghu looks surprised as Chengdu is crouched low behind him. A giant pillar of blue light shoots up from Chengdu's sword. The energy hits Penghu and lifts him into the air. Penghu flies across the large room. He crashes into the floor near the other students. Murray touches his chin and thinks about Chengdu being a genius. The instructor confirms he has taken the 10th seat. He asks if Chengdu wants to challenge anyone else. Chengdu says no. He thinks to himself that the resource rewards do not increase enough to justify more fighting. Moret holds his smartphone toward Chengdu. He asks to add him on a social media app. In the background, many other students raise their hands and shout that they want to add him too. Chengdu looks slightly surprised and agrees. Penghu kneels on the floor and grips Chengdu's leg with both hands. He calls Chengdu a god and asks for forgiveness for his earlier behavior. Chengdu looks down and thinks about the importance of knowing when to be strong and when to be humble. Teacher Ling walks ahead and tells Chengdu to meet him in the office after class. Later, Chengdu and Teacher Ling enter the principal's office. Principal Li Mu sits at a desk with papers. Teacher Ling asks the principal about early admission slots for Mount Everest and Mount Tai martial arts universities. The principal looks up with a surprised expression. He explains that the minimum requirement for those schools is Tier 1 perfect martial skill. He notes that while Chengdu is close, the final 1% is a very difficult gap to cross. Teacher Ling places his hand on Chengdu's shoulder and tells the principal to let him try a test. The principal sighs and points toward a testing instrument at the back of the room. He explains that the machine's maximum limit is Tier 1 high stage. Teacher Ling tells Chengdu to recreate the specific attack he used during the seat ranking battle. Chengdu stands in front of the machine. He holds a black practice sword. He narrows his eyes and focuses on the target. He lunges forward with great speed. He performs a move called the Pale Dragon Point Thrust. A massive explosion of blue energy and light hits the machine. The force of the strike shatters the equipment into pieces. Teacher Ling looks at the wreckage in surprise. He notes that Chengdu was at a lower level only yesterday. He realizes the boy reached Tier 1, perfect overnight. Chengdu looks at the shattered machine and touches the back of his head. He looks worried and apologizes to the principal for breaking the instrument. He speaks loudly to the principal, calling Chengdu a combat genius. He gestures with his gloved hands toward the boy. The principal strokes his beard with a white gloved hand. He looks thoughtful and impressed. He declares that Chengdu is an absolute martial arts genius and must be prioritized for training. He orders that Chengdu's training resources be set to those of the first-ranked student. The principal looks at Chengdu and explains the early special admission process. He tells Chengdu to strive for a top 3 finish in the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament. Chengdu raises his right hand and asks for a definition of special admission. The principal explains that to enter the top 8 famous schools, a student must reach a life intensity level of at least 6.5. Teacher Ling explains that reaching level 6.5 before the entrance exam is very difficult, but special admission only requires Tier 1, perfect skill. Chengdu tells the teacher he wants to attend Mount Huang Martial Arts University. Teacher Ling looks surprised because the top schools offer similar resources. Chengdu explains that he wants to stay close to home so he can protect his family if a crisis happens in Liang City. Teacher Ling looks at Chengdu with a seriousness, noting the boy's great sense of responsibility at a young age. Chengdu smiles and thanks the teacher and principal before leaving the office. He walks through the school gate and joins the crowd of students on the sidewalk. He thinks about the 1-month timeline before the early special admission begins. He decides to stay in the school's private training room to focus on his strength. As Chengdu crosses a street, he considers using specialized medicine to increase his life intensity level. He looks up at a large building and thinks about the 3 major organizations in the world. The first is the Extreme Martial Palace, which fights alien civilizations. The second is the Technology Martial Palace, which focuses on improving human strength through science. The third is the Martial Artist Alliance, which is responsible for keeping public order. Chengdu tells the attendant he is ready for the endurance test. He stands inside the large testing machine. The machine activates and glows with light. Afterward, the attendant looks with a confused expression. Our boy walks away and adjusts his backpack. The attendant calls the technical department on her phone. She tells them the machine seems to be broken because the student had no reaction. Chengdu goes to his private training room at school. He sits on the floor in his blue tracksuit. Chengdu holds 3 small blue pills in his palm. He calculates that taking 3 pills at once will make the pain 10 times stronger. He decides to swallow all 3 pills together. Blue lightning surrounds her. He grits his teeth and looks in pain as electricity sparks across his body. After the light fades, he wipes sweat from his face and exhales. A screen appears. It shows that his life intensity has increased from 5.2 to 5.3. Chengdu stands up and looks at his hands. He thinks about reaching level 6.5 to secure his future. He looks at a small box on the floor. Most of the pills are gone. He calculates that his current supply will only last 5 days. He sits back down against the wall and realizes he must win the upcoming tournament to earn more money for medicine. The side effects of the pills make his body feel heavy and frozen. He decides to train his mind since he cannot move his muscles. He closes his eyes to enter the crystal space. He remembers fighting large monsters called green firefly giants all night. Afterward, he arrives at the Hongji class to receive his new resources. A teacher with long red hair and glasses named Yadi enters the room. She is a member of the Martial Artist Alliance. She stands at the front of the classroom and slams her hands onto the desk to get everyone's attention. She explains that her life intensity is above level 15. The teacher begins a lesson on mental power, how physical strength is normally spread throughout the body. She explains that mental power allows a person to concentrate all their strength into one point. This technique is called mental power attachment, and it increases explosive power. She warns the students that mental power is very limited until it reaches tier 10. She advises the class to focus on their life intensity levels for the upcoming college entrance exam. The teacher tells all the students to stand up for a test. She holds a short purple flute in her hand. She calls the test the Song of Exhaustion. She will use the music to measure the mental power of each student. Finally, she looks toward Chengdu. She tells him he can choose to skip the test because it will not affect his exam score. Chengdu stands in the middle of the classroom. The teacher looks at him and offers him a choice to participate in the mental power test. The teacher lifts the purple flute to her lips. She prepares to play the Song of Exhaustion. The other students look determined. Some smile as they wait for the test to begin. The teacher plays her flute. Purple energy and music notes flow around the room. Suddenly, a large purple shadow appears. Chengdu realizes he is in a mental illusion. He calls it physical hypnosis. He moves quickly to attack the shadow. He jumps high and hits the monster with a strong kick. Purple light explodes across the screen. Back in the classroom, Chengdu remains standing. He does not look hurt. The teacher stops playing the flute. She looks very shocked. She wonders how Chengdu stayed so calm during the test. Chengdu closes his eyes and smiles as the purple energy fades away. The teacher notices that Chengdu's mental power is very strong. She raises her flute and increases the mental pressure to a higher level. Purple energy glows around her body as she plays. In the classroom, many students begin to collapse as they tremble and sweat on the floor. They look exhausted and say they cannot hold on any longer. The teacher is surprised that Chengdu is still standing. She wonders how he has such talent despite his poor family background. Even the top-ranked student, Moret, falls to the floor in pain. The teacher opens her eyes, wide in shock. She decides to increase the mental pressure to level 8. In the illusion, a massive purple giant looms over Chengdu. The giant clenches its fist and strikes with great force. Chengdu feels a heavy weight from the pressure. He sweats and breathes hard as he pushes back. He manages to stand up straight again. The teacher watches him closely. She thinks he has amazing talent and mental power. They move to the principal's office. The teacher and Ling talk to the principal. The principal's body shakes with shock at his desk. He hears that Chengdu has both martial and mental talents. He says Chengdu could become a soaring martial artist who can fly. He thinks the top 8 schools are a waste of Chengdu's skill. He wants Chengdu to attend Black Dragon University instead. Ling calls Chengdu into his office. Ling sits behind a desk filled with books and monitors. Chengdu sits in a chair across from him. Ling asks if Chengdu knows about Black Dragon University. Chengdu says he only knows it as a top-tier school. Ling explains that the university does not take regular students. They only choose the best geniuses who can reach the highest levels of power. The teacher explains the requirements to become a soaring martial artist. This rank requires a life intensity of 9.9 and mid-stage martial arts skills. He notes that many students cannot afford the expensive medicine needed to reach this level. Chengdu then looks at the teacher and says he will try to enter Black Dragon Martial Arts University. In his mind, Chengdu feels worried. He does not want to leave his family. He thinks this departure might be a permanent parting. Teacher Ling places a hand on Chengdu's shoulder to encourage him. He tells Chengdu to use the other top schools as a safety net while he aims for the best university. The 100 Cities Hegemony tournament is only 1 month away. Inside a house, a hand holds a plate of food. A voice calls out that breakfast is ready. Chengdu responds to the call and begins to walk toward the meal. His sister eats breakfast and observes her brother. She notices his figure has improved and he looks more handsome. Chengdu tells his parents and sister that he will live at the school starting today. He explains that he must focus on his strength to prepare for the tournament happening in 1 month. His mother looks concerned and tells him to watch his health so he does not faint again. The sister looks surprised and asks how he can get a room after the school year has already started. Chengdu smiles and explains that as a student in the Hongji class, the school gave him a private martial arts room. He says the room has a specialized area for him to rest. His father smiles and gives a thumbs up. He tells his son to keep improving and to ask for anything he needs. He encourages Chengdu to charge forward. He finishes his meal and stands up from the dining table. He places his black backpack over one shoulder. He looks at his family and announces that he is leaving for school. His father clenches his fist in an encouraging gesture and tells him to go for it. His mother stands with her hands together and a kind smile, telling him to take good care of himself. His sister smiles at him and tells him to work hard and win first place. Chengdu walks through a hallway as he looks at a list of items the school provided for him. These items include 90 bags of Qi blood milk, 30 Qi blood pills, and 4 bags of powder. He calculates that these resources are worth at least 50,000 yuan. He thinks to himself that martial arts is a sport for wealthy people. He places his hand on the glowing screen as he is active and unlocks the door. He stands in front of his new private training room and resolves to spend all of his time from now on focusing on his classes and his physical training. Inside his private training room, he speaks to his AI assistant and orders the AI to increase the gravity in the room to 5 times the normal amount. The AI responds, "Yes, master." Blue energy comes out from Chengdu's body and he grits his teeth and grips his sword tightly. He thinks to himself that the pressure feels like 15 adult elephants are pressing down on his body. He says it will be interesting to fight a machine under these conditions. A screen announces that the 4th round of practice is starting. A giant training robot with glowing red eyes and large red boxing gloves appears in front of him. The robot swings a fast punch toward Chengdu's head. Chengdu knows that in this environment, a single mistake could tear his muscles or break his bones. He decides that he cannot block the robot's attacks directly. The training robot suddenly changes the path of its punch mid-air. Chengdu leans his body back to avoid the strike. A status screen appears on the robot's face. The screen says his evasion efficiency is 87%. The system warns him that his energy consumption is too high. It suggests that he reduces unnecessary movements. The robot then attacks with its hand and foot at the same time. Chengdu jumps backward to create distance. He realizes the robot is trying to block all his normal escape routes. Chengdu smiles and says that since he cannot dodge the attack, he will make the robot feel the heavy pressure of doubled gravity. He quickly steps his foot firmly onto the robot's moving limb. The robot strikes down from above. Chengdu grips his sword with both hands and holds it high to block the attack. Bright blue energy shatters around his feet as he takes the heavy impact. Suddenly, the giant robot collapses to its knees. Thick white smoke pours out of the robot's head as a loud crash echoes in the room. Chengdu lands smoothly on the floor behind the machine and looks back at his defeated opponent. White smoke rises from the robot's neck as its single red eye glows brightly. A system message announces that the robot is using its last resort. The robot suddenly lunges toward Chengdu with its long arms stretched wide open. Chengdu holds his sword and looks surprised. He wonders how the machine can use such an underhanded tactic. The robot falls to the floor and wraps its long arms and legs tightly around Chengdu from behind. Chengdu sits trapped in the robot's grip. He speaks to his AI assistant and orders it to turn off the heavy gravity. He calmly asks the robot to let him go, while the robot's system repeatedly flashes the last resort warning. Later, Chengdu sits alone on the floor in a meditative pose. His sword rests on the ground beside him. He breathes out a sigh and notes that his physical body has reached its absolute limit. He decides to relax his muscles for now. He plans to use his void immortal visualization method to train his mental power next. He enters his mental space and stands on a rippling red surface beneath a dark sky. A massive black shadow with multiple glowing red eyes and a large open mouth looms above him. A bright blue aura surrounds Chengdu's body. He clenches his fists and his eyes glow white. He challenges the shadow, shouting for it to come so he can gain mental power experience points. In the real world, Chengdu sits cross-legged on the floor and bows his head and realizes his mental power has increased by 0.3 levels. He tries to move his body, but begins to tremble. He groans and says that his legs have gone completely numb. Chengdu exhales a small breath and looks very tired. He notes that his mind is exhausted and his physical body has not fully recovered yet. Because of this condition, he decides to just go to sleep. He falls backward and lies completely flat on the floor with his arms and legs spread wide. His eye is shown as he slowly drifts into a deep sleep. Suddenly, he wakes up standing in a completely different environment. He is inside the cold crystal space. Giant, sharp blue crystals tower behind him. He stands firmly and grips his long sword with both hands, resting the tip of the blade on the ground. From the shadows, massive green barbarian giants with glowing red eyes and green patches on their skin begin to emerge. He remembers that during their last encounter, he failed to kill even a single one because he did not understand their abilities. He stands alone in the vast dark space and rests his sword on his shoulder. He declares that this time, he will definitely test his strength against them. He grips his sword on his right shoulder and clenches his left fist. A dark blast strikes the arm of a giant. The giant looks down at its wounded shoulder. Chengdu observes the monsters and realizes that the green patches on their skin are not curses or birthmarks. He explains that these patches contain healing energy. Chengdu dashes forward with his sword drawn and strikes a giant, creating a bright flash of light. He notes that the green barbarian giants only have high health and no other special abilities. He determines that if he destroys their green patches first, the monsters will no longer be a threat. He holds his sword ready and declares that now is the time to strike. He brings his weapon down with great force. The giant monster falls backward and crashes to the floor. A massive explosion creates a cloud of dust and debris. Chengdu stands firmly as bright blue energy flows from the tip of his sword. He notes that his body feels incredibly light. He decides to continue his heavy gravity training as soon as he wakes up. He dashes forward at high speed. He thinks to himself that if he continues to train this way, he will definitely reach the top 3 in the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament. After some time, he arrived at High City. The highly anticipated day of the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament has finally come. Inside a grand hotel lobby with high gold ceilings, Chengdu looks around in awe. He thinks to himself that this is his first time visiting such a luxurious hotel. Teacher Ling walks ahead and raises his hand, telling the students to follow him. Suddenly, an angry voice shouts out, asking why he is not allowed to sign in. Chengdu turns his head to look at the commotion. A young man named Wu Ming, a participating student from Lu City, violently slams his hand down in anger. He yells that he arrived exactly on time, according to the rules. He aggressively asks why he is being targeted and demands a clear explanation. Wu Ming leans aggressively over the hotel reception desk. He stares down at the female staff member. He moves his hand to his waist and begins to draw his sword. They are shocked and wonder if Wu Ming is actually going to attack and hurt someone right here in the lobby. Chengdu looks at the angry student and thinks to himself that this rough person's martial arts level is very high and might be equal to his own. The other students behind Chengdu also look shocked by the man's power. A girl, named Zhou Xiaogu, walks forward. She is a member of the High City team. She calls out to the receptionist. She instructs the staff to let the angry student sign in. However, she declares that his missing teammates will be marked as forfeiting the tournament. Zhou Xiaogu stands on a high glass balcony overlooking the lobby. The crowd of students looks up at her and points. They whisper with excitement and call her the Sea Princess. The students say she looks much more beautiful in person than in her pictures online. Chengdu looks confused and repeats the title, Sea Princess. The student in the beanie smirks at him. He assumes Chengdu is attracted to her and tells him to give up immediately. He explains that the girl's name is Zhou Xiaogu. She is the only daughter of the principal of High City No. 1 High School. He says her family power, wealth, reputation, and personal talent are all at the highest level. He tells Chengdu that he has no chance with a girl of her status. Suddenly, Chengdu opens his eyes wide in shock. He remembers where he saw her face before. Zhou Xiaogu leans her arms on the balcony railing and looks down calmly. Chengdu realizes she is the exact same person who used a sneak attack to defeat him in the virtual combat capsule. He remembers her username was the little girl selling nuclear bombs. He is surprised because he thought her virtual face was just a computer-generated avatar. He realizes her face is exactly the same and notes that she is very beautiful in the real world. The student tells Chengdu to stop daydreaming. Chengdu smiles slightly and looks forward with an excited expression. He thinks to himself about meeting his online rival in real life. He believes she will not recognize him. He remembers that her martial arts skills were one step ahead of his in the past, having already reached Tier 1 Perfect. He wonders how strong she is now and feels glad he decided to come to the tournament. The scene changes to a hotel room numbered 301. Inside, a teapot steams on a small stove. Teacher Ling sits on a sofa and pours tea. Chengdu and the two other students sit on chairs across from him. Teacher Ling tells the group that the tournament rules are different this year. He explains that before the normal elimination rounds begin, there will be an extra event called the Badge Scramble Battle. One of the students asks about the Badge Scramble Battle, wondering what the new event will be. Chengdu asks about the specific details of the new tournament rule. Teacher Ling states that the tournament will last for 3 days and consists of 3 rounds. The first round is called the Badge Scramble Battle and will take place in a forest. The students have a 30-hour time limit to find specific badges. These badges have the words High and Martial written on them. Teacher Ling explains that after collecting the badges, the teams must travel to the endpoint. The number of teams that arrive with the badges will determine who passes the round. Chengdu asks the teacher how many badges exist in total. Teacher Ling replies that there are 50 high badges and 50 martial badges. He explains that this means a maximum of only 50 teams can pass. Because of this rule, at least half of the participants will be eliminated the very next day. Teacher Ling holds a white mug and explains the rules for the second round. He states that the second round is a one-on-one elimination tournament. The students will have very little time to rest. 150 people will fight in a single day to determine the top 10 strongest students. The matchups will be random, but students from the same team will not fight each other. The 2 other team members look very relieved. They are happy because they will not have to fight a monster like Chengdu. Teacher Ling raises 3 fingers and explains the third round, known as the Top 10 Battle. He tells the students that reaching this stage means they have already succeeded. Everyone in the top 10 will receive bonus points and cash rewards. He then talks about what it takes to reach the top 3. Teacher Ling explains that winning depends on their physical condition. The tournament involves 3 days of continuous fighting with almost no rest. He warns that they will likely get injured. He concludes that the final winner might not be the single strongest fighter, but rather the student with the most balanced and complete overall abilities. Teacher Ling raises his index finger to make one final point. He strictly orders the students that killing is forbidden. He explains that this rule applies to both the tournament and real life forever. He reminds them that their true enemies are the alien civilizations. He warns them to never point their weapons at their own companions. Teacher Ling continues to explain the event details and tells them they will wear special clothes inside the arena. These clothes will make everyone's life intensity level exactly the same. He also reveals that the team leaders will secretly enter the arena to protect the students from real danger. Teacher Ling then closes his eyes and smiles warmly. He warns the students that it is best if he does not have to help them. He explains that if he is forced to save them, they will be eliminated from the tournament immediately. Finally, he encourages the team. He tells them tomorrow depends on their own efforts, asks them to believe in themselves, and says they are the best no matter what happens. Chengdu and his 2 teammates look very determined. They shout, "Yes!" in agreement with their teacher. In the tall buildings of High City No. 1 High School, Chengdu stands on a high platform with his sword strapped to his back. Many other students gather in the area below him. He looks surprised and asks if this area is the forest. A man in a green suit and a white glove stands in front of the crowd. He is Zhou Cheng, the principal of the school. He points his finger and announces that everyone has arrived. He introduces himself as one of the organizers of the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament. Principal Zhou Cheng stands before a massive white wall with a tall door. He explains to the students that the area behind the door is a special dimensional rift known as a spirit realm. He says it was created by the collision of 9 planets centuries ago. He announces that this specific area is a level 1 spirit realm called the Forest of Timberwolves. Chengdu thinks to himself about the spirit realm. He knows that it is a dangerous alien space filled only with monsters and no humans. The principal raises his finger to reassure the crowd. He states that the space is very stable and completely safe. He explains that Lei En, the 3rd strongest person in the world and founder of the Martial Artist Alliance, personally certified the area. Finally, he looks at the students and states that this trial carries a real risk of death. He urges everyone to prioritize their own safety inside the forest. He points a finger at the student with the ponytail, named Wu Zhang. He tells Wu Zhang that he cannot act alone just because he arrived by himself. He explains that the staff will assign suitable teammates to him based on his skill level. Chengdu thinks to himself that this person seems to be angry with everyone around him. Next, a man stands in front of a glowing blue scanner on a wall. The system announces that his iris authentication has successfully passed. An announcement tells the crowd to prepare to enter the Forest of Timberwolves. The large group of students walks toward a giant, glowing blue magic circle on the ground. A voice in the crowd asks if this area is the Forest of Timberwolves. The principal looks toward the students and explains the situation. He states that the true location of the spirit realm is a strict secret. He explains that the glowing circle is a magic array that leads directly to the forest. He says that past generations worked very hard to build it. He tells the students that the array is a safety measure. If the dimensional rift suddenly closes, the staff can use this magic circle to safely teleport everyone out. Chengdu and his 2 teammates stand together as they wait. 2 system screens appear above him. The first screen tells everyone to step into the magic array. It explains that each team will be randomly teleported to one of 1,000 different starting points inside the forest. The second screen reveals a challenge. It states that the map shows 300 badge locations, but only 100 of them are real. The other 200 markers are fake. The screen wishes everyone good luck. The giant magic circle begins to glow much brighter. Blue sparks of energy rise from the ground. A final system screen appears and tells the students to prepare for activation. A bright beam of white light flashes upward as the magic array activates. Chengdu slowly opens his eyes and holds his hand up to block the blinding flash. When the light fades, he stands in a dense forest. Tall trees surround him, and sunlight shines down through the leaves. This new area is the Forest of Timberwolves. Chengdu looks around the bright woods and asks if this place is the spirit realm. Behind him, his teammate holds up a glowing blue map and asks Chengdu which marked location they should travel to first. He tells his crew that their luck is off the charts because there's a badge spawning right near their starting location. Refusing to miss an easy score, he leads his hyped-up squad straight into the forest to see if this loot is the real deal or just bait. They approach a massive, ancient stone monolith hidden deep among the trees. Suddenly, something strikes the pillar with pinpoint accuracy, shattering the outer stone to reveal a glowing blue badge embedded perfectly inside. Chengdu casually reaches out and taps the glowing prize. He stands there, completely relaxed. He tells his crew that he fully expected the early drops to be fake traps, but they actually struck gold. His buddy suddenly panics, screaming for him to watch out as danger violently approaches. Out of nowhere, 2 massive, razor-sharp energy spikes tear through the air, crashing into the ground with explosive force right where they were standing. Chengdu reaches over his shoulder and grips the handle of his large sword. He looks forward and states that he did not expect to encounter someone else so quickly. 3 students appear among the trees. Identifies them as the Wuhai City team. The team leader stands in the center holding a long silver spear. 2 teammates crouch beside him, also holding spears with wide blades. The leader addresses the Liang City team directly. He demands that they hand over their badges immediately if they do not want to be eliminated from the tournament. Chengdu narrows his eyes and observes the enemy team. He thinks to himself about how quickly they were targeted right after entering the forest. Chengdu's 2 teammates step forward. One clenches his hand and yells for the enemies to come and try to take their badges. Chengdu remains calm and tells his team to leave the fight to him. He states he will fight them alone. His teammates look surprised and begin to sweat. The 3 enemies leap high into the air. They point their spears down toward Chengdu. Purple energy glows from their weapons. They unleash an attack called Comet Spear Art Third Stance, boiling the loot and burning the crane. The enemy leader shouts that Chengdu does not know the immensity of heaven and earth. A single black sword blade blocks the 3 purple spear strikes at the exact same time. The enemy leader lands on the ground and questions how Chengdu blocked their combined strike head-on with a sword without falling behind at all. He grips the silver spear tightly, causing veins to pop on the skin. The enemy struggles and wonders how Chengdu is so strong when everyone's life intensity is restricted to level 5. Chengdu analyzes the enemy leader. He realizes Li Yuan is at the limit of Tier 1 high stage, which explains his arrogance. However, Chengdu notes that the other 2 enemies are much weaker. Suddenly, Chengdu's eye glows bright blue. He activates his level 9 mental power attachment. His hand tightens around his sword handle as glowing yellow energy gathers around his fingers. He swings his sword and unleashes a massive burst of energy. The force immediately pushes Li Yuan backward. Then Chengdu uses the flowing light sword art first stance, painting the ground as a prison. A giant wave of blue energy sweeps across the battlefield. The powerful attack strikes all 3 enemies at once. The leader looks completely terrified and screams as his teammate crashes violently into a thick tree trunk. Li Yuan lands heavily on his feet and skids backward across the forest dirt. He drops to one knee and pants heavily, using his silver spear to support his weight. His 2 teammates lie completely motionless and unconscious on the ground behind him. Sweat drips down Li Yuan's face as he grits his teeth in anger and thinks to himself in frustration, wondering how Chengdu's sword could possibly strike with more weight than his own heavy spear. He questions exactly how much physical strength Chengdu truly possesses. Chengdu makes a tactical decision and thinks to himself that he must take down the strongest opponent first. Chengdu dashes forward with extreme speed. He thrusts his sword toward Li Yuan and calls out his next attack. The flowing light sword art second stance. Just as the blade approaches, a finger quickly stops it in mid-air. A man in a white suit and glasses suddenly appears. He blocks Chengdu's sword strike using only 2 fingers. Chengdu looks shocked as the man praises the powerful strike. Behind the man, Li Yuan trembles but holds his spear tightly. He shouts to Teacher Lin Bei that he can still fight. Teacher Lin Bei turns his head and tells Li Yuan that he has lost. He explains that Chengdu's attack tore Li Yuan's clothes, proving his power has reached a level 7 life intensity. The teacher states that Li Yuan could not block a second strike and orders him to leave. Teacher Lin Bei thinks to himself that Chengdu's talent is greater than Li Yuan's and that the boy will be a powerful force in the future. In the shadows of the forest, Teacher Ling Yun hides behind a leafy tree and smiles. Teacher Lin Bei speaks into the woods, telling Ling Yun that he is leaving and looks forward to his performance in the finals. As Li Yuan walks away, he stops and turns around. He asks for Chengdu's name and admits that he rarely submits to anyone, but he submits to him. Chengdu smiles and replies that his name will be the first place winner the day after tomorrow. Inside the High City No. 1 High School auditorium, a large screen displays Chengdu's victory. A crowd of people watches the broadcast. In the audience, the Liang City principal laughs and pats the shoulder of a depressed man named Old Sao. The principal thanks Old Sao for letting his team win. He mocks Old Sao by asking what time he wants his plane ticket for tonight and offers to book it immediately. Nearby, Mayor Q speaks to the principal. Mayor Q says he did not expect 4 students to reach Tier 1 perfect martial arts this year, counting Chengdu. The principal smiles slightly and corrects him, stating that the number is still only 3. Another man in the audience looks at the screen and asks if the Liang City team has already collected 2 badges. He wonders why they are moving toward the exit without the required 2 badges, noting that this action will cause their direct elimination. In the Forest Wolf Woods, Chengdu's 2 teammates look shocked. One teammate asks Chengdu if he plans to take out a student named Wu Zhang right there. Chengdu explains that getting 2 badges is not difficult for someone with his level of strength. His teammates sweat and quietly agree. He has determined eyes as he declares that he wants to win the championship. He explains that first place only brings prestige, but he needs the 1 million prize money to survive. He holds up 3 fingers and offers to explain his plan. 3 faces appear in a dark void. Chengdu identifies them as the strongest players: Zhou Xiaogu and Ku Zhongtian from the High City team, and Wu Zhang from the Lu City team. Chengdu says the High City team has 2 strong fighters they cannot defeat. He believes ambushing Wu Zhang now will increase their chances of winning. His teammate, Lu Bo, points a finger and asks if this plan just helps the High City team eliminate a major rival. Chengdu turns to him and says he is wrong. He states that if he does not eliminate Wu Zhang now, he might not reach the top 3. Chengdu explains that teammates will not fight each other in the second round. He suspects the host city will force him to fight Wu Zhang so the High City team can advance easily. Chengdu explains that the winner of his fight with Wu Zhang will have to fight both High City players one after another in the third round. He asks his teammates if it is possible for him to defeat 3 highly ranked fighters consecutively in just 2 days. The teammate touches his chin and says this plan feels like dark manipulation. Chengdu admits the plan is unfair to his team. He explains that he cannot guarantee a victory against Wu Zhang, and if they fail, they will be eliminated in the first round. The teammate smiles nervously and replies that they already know their own strength and are just happy to participate. He then asks Chengdu how he plans to locate Wu Zhang in the large area. The 3 students walk together through a forest. Chengdu explains that because of Wu Zhang's arrogant personality and great strength, he will definitely go to the area with the most badges to steal them from others. Chengdu smiles brightly and states that their goal is to wait and block Wu Zhang on his path to the exit that has the highest concentration of badges. They stand at the edge of a high cliff, looking down into the valley. A loud noise echoes from the ground below them. At the bottom of the cliff, another team of 3 students is currently fighting a giant purple wolf monster. Chengdu looks down with wide eyes in surprise. He sees that the beast violently swings its sharp claws. He recognizes the creature as a BB wolf from his private crystal space and wonders why it is appearing in this forest. He thinks about the Alien Race Illustrated Handbook. He notes that the book records all monsters currently discovered by humanity, but the monsters from his crystal space are not in the book at all. Chengdu's face becomes very serious and wonders if all the monsters inside his crystal space actually originate from the spirit realm. Down in the forest, a girl grips a red whip weapon in her hands. She curses and blames their current situation on the guy named Wu Zhang. Suddenly, a bright red and white energy cuts quickly through the air. The giant monster roars loudly in the dark forest. A voice calls out, warning Xiaomei to run. Suddenly, a bright blue energy slash cuts through the air. The blue attack slices the monster in half right in front of the girl. The girl sits on the ground with her eyes wide open in shock. She looks up and asks if he is her teacher. Chengdu tells her that he heard the name Wu Zhang and asks if she has seen him. The student replied that their first mark point was empty. She tells him that while they were walking to the second mark point, they unexpectedly found Wu Zhang fighting 10 monsters just like this one. The student explains that they tried to follow the teacher's instructions to retreat from Wu Zhang. However, they did not expect a monster to target them and chase them all the way to this spot. Chengdu looks at the group and asks where the battle is taking place. They point toward a dark area and a voice says, "It is over there." Chengdu remembers that there are no badge markers in that specific direction. He wonders what Wu Zhang is doing in an empty area. Chengdu thinks that this unusual situation means something is wrong. However, he also realizes that if Wu Zhang is fighting many monsters, his stamina must be very low. He decides this is a rare opportunity to defeat a strong enemy. He shouts for his team to go. The 3 boys run quickly through the dark forest. One teammate smiles and says they are very lucky to get exactly what they wished for. The other teammate runs beside Chengdu and asks if he has a battle plan. Chengdu tells his teammates not to act rashly when they arrive. He explains that he suddenly has a bad feeling about the situation. He strictly orders them to follow his commands at all times from now on. The 2 teammates look at Chengdu and say, "Okay." The 3 students run together into the foggy forest. The group travels fast through the forest wolf woods. One teammate looks around and asks if they went the wrong way. He states that they have been running for a long time but still have not seen Wu Zhang. Suddenly, a fast streak of blue energy flashes past them. The 3 students stand still and look toward the sudden movement. Chengdu realizes his team has been tricked. Several wolves with glowing red eyes emerge from the darkness. Chengdu lowers his head and explains that the previous group lied about Wu Zhang's location. He says the group pointed them this way, so the wolves would kill them, allowing the other team to steal their badges. The teammates stand back to back with their weapons drawn. They realize they are surrounded by 20 monsters in a wolf den. Chengdu notes that these wolves are stronger than the ones in his training space. Chengdu shouts a strict warning to his team. He tells them they must not bleed because the blood will make the wolves go berserk. He instructs them to watch out for the sharp spikes on the wolves' claws. He dashes forward with extreme speed. He strikes a wolf with a powerful burst of blue and white energy as the beast roars loudly. An outside observer announces that the Liang City team has walked straight into a dangerous wolf den. A man says the team walked blindly without checking their map. He believes they will lose to the 20 wolves because only Zhou Xiaogu from the High City team is strong enough to fight them. The Liang City principal looks shocked and nervous. He wonders if Chengdu will be eliminated in the first round. Old Cao sighs and says they will likely leave together tonight. Principal Zhou about the students' chances against a medium-sized wolf den. Principal Zhou closes his eyes and replies that their chance is less than 10%. He explains that this test was created to make the students experience devastation. He states that while the cities are safe, the outside world is overrun by monsters, and the students must face this reality. The man sweats and asks if the wolves can be avoided. Principal Zhou explains that the badges are placed behind the wolf dens. says, if students just follow the map, they will walk right into them. He notes that fighting a few wolves is a good test, but the Liang City team is very unlucky to meet 20 at once. The man wonders if their High City team will be safe. Principal Zhou smiles confidently and says the High City team has his daughter and the man's son, so even a large wolf den will not stop them. Back in the forest, Chengdu calmly looks back over his shoulder and says the monster was too weak to withstand a single blow. He thinks to himself that his plan is working. He is glad that he has successfully attracted most of the monster attacks. He believes that as long as the BB wolves do not enter their berserk mode, his two teammates should be able to hold on and survive. His teammates fight a large wolf. One teammate shouts Chengdu's name in worry. The other teammate tells Lu Bo that they must finish off their enemies as quickly as possible so they can go help Chengdu. The teammate leaps high into the air, swinging a glowing blue weapon. He tells Lu Bo that they will each take on 3 wolves. Suddenly, a massive wave of blue energy sweeps across the dark ground. He announces his next attack, the second stance of the flowing light sword art, golden prums ringing to the heavens. Chengdu leaps down from above with his sword glowing bright orange. He uses the flowing light sword fourth form, Azure Dragon Precision Thrust, to pierce a wolf with a powerful burst of blue light. His teammate wears a beanie and struggles to block multiple purple claw attacks from the wolves. He is angry because he always ranked first in his class before, but now he feels like he is becoming a heavy burden to his team during this fierce battle. Chengdu thinks about his situation and notes that the BB wolves have a life intensity of at least level 5, and the strongest is almost level 6.5. He realizes that even though he can use the power of a level 7, he cannot attack if the wolves do not make a move. Nearby, his teammate Mo Lighty struggles to dodge fast claw attacks from a leaping wolf. Chengdu observes the fight and notes that his other teammate, Lu Bo, is fighting a draw against 3 wolves and cannot help Mo Late. He thinks that his power and speed are still lacking just a bit. He states that if he can improve by another 1% and make his sword a little faster, they might be able to fight their way out. A giant wolf opens its mouth and roars loudly. Another wolf leaps forward to attack. Chengdu moves incredibly fast and swings his sword, creating a massive web of bright blue lightning. He thinks to himself that his slight lack of speed prevents him from breaking the wolf's cooperative defense. He slashes downward, leaving trails of blue and pink energy in the air. He thinks, "Good, this is the feeling," as he grasps the new technique. She moves forward and declares that he has finally broken through to Tier 1, Perfect Martial Arts Mastery. A student stands before a wolf and apologizes nervously. Chengdu shouts an urgent warning to his teammates. He tells them they must leave immediately because the wolves are about to enter a berserk state. The teammate in the beanie hesitates and stammers, but a dark wolf with glowing red energy quickly charges right at him. Chengdu moves with incredible speed. Blue lightning crackles around his body as he leaps through the air to intercept the attack. Chengdu lands and stands in front of his teammates with his sword drawn. He instructs them to use this opportunity to retreat while he holds off the wolf pack. He warns them that if they delay any longer, he will run out of the energy needed to protect them. The 2 teammates turn and run away quickly, agreeing that staying would only hold Chengdu back. Chengdu is left standing alone, and blood drips from his sword. He thinks to himself that he was holding back his power earlier because he was afraid of accidentally injuring his teammates. He looks focused and relieved and notes that it will be much easier to fight now without any reservations, and he prepares to test the full extent of his strength against the fierce wolf monster waiting in the shadows. A wolf leaps down to attack Chengdu as an observer notes that Chengdu's life intensity has reached level 7. The battle is broadcast on a screen in an auditorium. A man with glasses says that Chengdu's explosive power shows his actual life intensity must be much higher than level 7. Another man adds that Chengdu's ability to completely suppress the pack of wolves is terrifying. Principal Zhou Cheng agrees that Chengdu's strength is terrifying, but he states that the real terror is the boy's bottomless stamina. The man next to him looks shocked to hear this. Another official holding a clipboard explains that Chengdu has been fighting continuously for almost an hour. The shocked man notes that even a level 10 martial artist would be exhausted by now. He wonders how a student can maintain this fighting state for so long. Principal Zhou Cheng narrows his eyes and wonders how many secrets Chengdu is hiding. In the forest, Chengdu dashes forward, surrounded by bright blue energy. He strikes the wolf with his sword. Principal Zhou observes that Chengdu perfectly controls his strength and does not waste a single drop of energy. As Chengdu's eyes glow blue and he strikes the monster again, the principal realizes that Chengdu is using this real battle to train and improve his own martial arts skills. He stands on a path covered with the bodies of defeated wolf monsters. Suddenly, sharp red claw marks slash through the air toward him. He quickly dodges the attack and swings his sword unleashes a massive wave of bright blue energy. He uses a powerful technique called thundering war drums to strike the dark wolf monster. He thinks to himself that using this continuous attack combination consumes a lot of his energy. He lands against the side of a dark tree trunk and stabs his sword directly into the wood to hold his body in place above the ground. He thinks to himself that he needs to rest and recover his physical strength. Suddenly, he jumps down and faces the creature. He recognizes the specific monster. He narrows his eyes and decides that this monster is the perfect target. He thinks that he will use this beast to test his new power. He dashes forward with incredible speed, and the monster is at level 7 strength. Afterward, Chengdu stands alone in the center of the dark forest. He thinks to himself that all the wolves in this area have finally been cleared out. He looks down at the handle of his glowing sword. He grips it tightly and decides that he must now go find the boss. He winces in pain but quickly dashes past the beast and swings his sword covered in bright blue energy and strikes the monster. The monster is pushed back but immediately counters with a massive red claw attack. The powerful strike hits Chengdu and sends him flying backward. As he falls, he realizes he must find a way to counterattack or he will be defeated. The monster lunges again and hits Chengdu directly in the chest. Chengdu sweats heavily and blood drips from his mouth and thinks to himself that his sword needs to be faster, stronger, and heavier, and that he must break through his limits. He remembers his happy family smiling together, his hard training sessions, and teacher Lingyun's encouraging smile. He tells himself that this is more than just a competition, it is the turning point of his life. The monster strikes again, and Chengdu blocks the claws with his sword. He clenches his teeth tightly as blue lightning crackles around him. He absolutely cannot fall here. Chengdu dives from above and strikes the beast with his sword. Chengdu thinks to himself that the feeling of this sword strike seems a bit different. Chengdu looks up in alarm as red claw attacks fly toward his face from the darkness. The wolf grabs Chengdu's sword blade with its sharp claws. Watching from a tree branch, the teacher looks worried and thinks that if Chengdu had not easily trusted others, he would not be in this dangerous situation. The teacher believes this is a good lesson for entering society, but the price of the lesson is too high. The teacher sighs, looks down, and decides that the battle is decided. He prepares to step in and end the fight to save the student. Suddenly, the teacher's eyes widened in shock. He watches in disbelief and thinks that Chengdu is actually doing something unexpected. Chengdu stands firmly as bright blue wind and energy swirl around his body. Chengdu thinks again that the feeling of his sword strike is different. A giant blue tornado of wind erupts around him, blowing the dark wolves away into the air. Chengdu thinks to himself that the movement of his sword perfectly matches the flow of the wind, and he realizes his attack has truly become stronger. Chengdu holds his sword and walks forward. A system message appears and congratulates him. His flowing light sword art has upgraded to tier 199%. In the auditorium, a man in a purple suit sweats and looks shocked at the broadcast screen. He asks the principal how Chengdu had a breakthrough during the battle. He notes that Chengdu's martial arts level is now equal to theirs. He thinks that a normal student at that level would lose to a medium-sized wolf den because of physical exhaustion. The teacher with his hands folded together says Chengdu's power and speed seem too great for his current level. He tells the group that Chengdu is using mental power attachment. He suspects Chengdu's mental power is approaching level 10. The man looks surprised and says Chengdu has the potential to become a soaring martial artist. He explains that reaching level 10 will transform his soul into a martial soul. However, he notes that Chengdu still needs to reach tier 1,100%, which is a very difficult goal. The man in the black suit laughs and gestures with his hands. He tells the man he is too strict and calls Chengdu outstanding. In the audience, students point and look confused. They see the Mi City team on the screen. They realize it was the Mi City team who tricked Chengdu's team and pointed them directly toward the dangerous wolf den. In the forest, a girl from the Mi City team looks nervous. She asks a boy named Zhang Shuai if they can really get the badges smoothly. Zhang Shuai looks confident and tells her to relax. He explains that Chengdu's team cannot defeat all the wolves. He says the observing team leader will intervene to save them. This rescue will automatically eliminate Chengdu's team from the tournament. According to the rules, eliminated students must leave their badges on the ground. Zhang Shuai smiles and states that the badges have no trackers, and there are no other teams or wolves around to stop them from stealing the loot. He holds a blue badge and smiles confidently. He states that only their team is about to collect 2 badges. He says they have finally arrived. A teammate praises Zhang Shuai, calling him a godlike tactician for predicting the situation perfectly. However, Zhang Shuai begins to sweat and looks nervous. He says that he feels something is not right. The teammate points forward and excitedly announces that the badges are over there. A blue badge rests on the head of a defeated wolf. As the 3 students walk among the dead monsters, the teammate praises praises the teacher of the Liang City team for killing all the wolves. Zhang Shuai agrees that a massive battle happened, but he feels they overlooked something important. Suddenly, his eyes widened in terror. He yells for his team to run, realizing that the Liang City team was not eliminated and that the badge is a trap. The teammate looks back in shock and asks how that is possible. He wonders if Chengdu killed all the monsters by himself. Suddenly, a fast blue energy slash cuts through the air. The three students look terrified as Chengdu and his two teammates walk out from the bushes. Chengdu smiles and confirms that he actually killed the wolves all by himself. He looks at Zhang Shuai and asks how he figured out they were not eliminated. Zhang Shuai sweats heavily and explains that he knew because of the wounds on the wolves. He states that all team leaders are forbidden from carrying weapons, so an unarmed teacher could not slice the monsters open. Chengdu remembers his teacher, Ling, holding weapons like nunchucks during class. He realizes he still does not know his teacher's true weapon. He admits he completely overlooked this important detail. He tells himself he needs to be much more careful from now on. He reaches down and picks up a glowing blue badge. He casually throws the badge onto the ground in front of Zhang Shuai. Chengdu asks his original question again. He wants to know where Wu Zhang is located. He states firmly that he has no interest in the badges. He explains that he only wants to fight Wu Zhang. Zhang Shuai stands silently in shock as the badge lands at his feet. Zhang Shuai looks nervous while holding a glowing digital map. He thinks to himself that Chengdu's only reason for joining the tournament is to challenge Wu Zhang. Zhang Shuai explains that they saw Wu Zhang heading in the opposite direction. He says Wu Zhang's target was a star mark behind them, but he encountered the beast wolves on the way. Chengdu looks at the map. He realizes that the official navigation map must have a problem if there are hidden wolves on the straight path. He concludes that Wu Zhang is no longer at his original starting position, but he is definitely still near the star mark. A cut sound passes through the air, and Zhang Shuai looks shocked. Chengdu walks past the three terrified students with his sword drawn. He orders them to leave their badges on the ground and exit the tournament. Zhang Shuai curses and asks if Chengdu really expects them to quit. Chengdu turns his back and walks away from the group. He tells them he is simply thanking them for their earlier kindness when they pointed his team directly into the wolf trap. Zhang Shuai yells at him in anger. Suddenly, a fast blur of motion rushes in. A teacher moves at high speed and grabs the defeated students to remove them from the forest. The teacher's voice calls Chengdu a good kid as he rescues the students. The teacher angrily accuses Chengdu of breaking his promise and having no martial ethics. The teammate stands up from the bushes and yells back. He asks how the enemy team can accuse them of lacking ethics after tricking them. Chengdu turns his head and smiles calmly and thinks to himself that the man was only the Mi City team leader, so there is nothing to fear. He states that his action is simply called deception. Two glowing blue badges are shown. One badge says hi, and the other says Marshall. The three teammates stand together in the forest. The teammate realizes that the Mi City team happened to have the Marshall character badge. He explains that this is why the enemy team schemed against them, hoping to collect both badges at once. The teammate in the beanie holds a glowing blue map. He looks at Chengdu and asks if he still plans to challenge Wu Zhang in his current injured state. Chengdu places his hand over his chest and sweats, and replies that he is not going to fight. He explains that his stamina and mental power are completely depleted. He states that right now, even a weaker expert could force him into a difficult battle, so he cannot face a top-tier expert like Wu Zhang. Chengdu smiles sharply and reveals his true plan. He explains that he only asked the enemy team for Wu Zhang's location so he could purposely avoid him and other perfect-level experts. He adds that he did not expect their luck to be this good, and to collect all the required badges so easily. He raises his arm and looks at the map on his wrist. He points his finger at a red route on the screen. He tells his teammates to follow the indicated path straight to the moon mark, so they can submit their badges and end the first round of the competition. The teammate asks Chengdu why they are going this way. Chengdu explains that they have to take a detour. He looks thoughtful and says he felt collecting the badges was too easy. He suspects the organizers tricked them when they said the badge locations were safe. Chengdu looks back and mentions that Wu Zhang met the wolves midway to his target. He points out that the word midway is a major clue. The teammate looks surprised. The teammate in the beanie realizes the truth. He states that the real danger is on the journey, not at the badge locations. Chengdu points at his map and explains that to avoid wolf dens, teams must take routes where the star marks are closer. This is reliable, but it increases the chance of meeting other teams. Chengdu says the competition is meticulously designed. He explains that teams without strength or extreme luck will not reach the moon mark, even if they have 2 badges. The teammate says they cannot relax until they pass the assessment. The other teammates quickly agree. Suddenly, a shoe steps through thick bushes. Chengdu's eye widens in shock, and a drop of sweat falls down his face. A young man with blonde hair walks out of the forest. He carries a massive, heavy golden box on his back. Chengdu sweats and realizes they have encountered the dangerous High City team. He is frustrated because they are very close to the finish line. The young man closes his eyes and raises an eyebrow. He senses Chengdu's energy and asks if he is a Tier 1 perfect expert. Chengdu feels the man's powerful sword intent. He realizes that because this person can perceive his strength, he must be the Tier 1 perfect expert named Ku Zhongtian. 6 swords suddenly shoot out from the large golden box carried by Ku Zhongtian. Chengdu and his teammates tense up and prepare to fight. A voice suddenly tells Ku Zhongtian to stop. Zhou Xiaogu looks at the bloodstains on Chengdu's clothes. She explains that Chengdu must have just fought the BB wolves, so attacking him now would be an unfair victory. Zhou Xiaogu smiles confidently, and she tells Chengdu that she did not expect to find another Tier 1 perfect expert besides Wu Zheng. She declares that she will defeat both of them in the upcoming rounds. She proudly announces that the High City team has won 9 times in a row and will secure their 10th championship. As Zhou Xiaogu and Ku Zhongtian walk away, Chengdu's teammate watches them. He praises Zhou Xiaogu for acting like a great and honorable hero. Chengdu stares blankly with wide eyes. He remembers the virtual training space where she viciously sneak-attacked him from behind. While walking away, Ku Zhongtian says he is surprised by her honorable words. He notes that her true fighting style is to ruthlessly attack weak opponents without giving them a chance to breathe. Zhou Xiaogu blushes and points at a small floating camera drone. She quickly explains that she only said those things to protect her public image on the live broadcast. At night, inside a room, Chengdu falls backward onto his bed with his arms spread wide. He sighs and states that his daily mental training is complete. He looks at his holographic screen projecting from his wrist. He notes that 50 teams, totaling 150 students, have passed the first round. Chengdu calculates that he must defeat 4 competitors tomorrow to reach the 3rd round. He thinks about his mental power, which is currently at level 9. He explains that if he can defeat the 7th wave of monsters in his training space, his mental power will reach level 10 and undergo a major transformation. Chengdu decides it is time to enter the crystal space to practice his martial arts skills. He stands in a cold area filled with giant ice crystals. His sword starts glowing with purple energy. He states that the 7th wave of monsters is finally here. Suddenly, giant beasts appear and roar loudly. One of the giant beasts wields a large sword. Chengdu looks up at the beasts and wonders what this new enemy is. A system screen instructing Chengdu to prepare and announcing that the target is locked. The giant monster swings his arm down toward her. He blocks the heavy strike with his own sword, creating bright blue sparks. He thinks that he must dodge this powerful attack and find a different angle. He quickly leaps high into the air and looks down at the bear, and his eyes widen in alarm. He thinks to himself that the situation is not good. He realizes why the creature is called the double-crowned bear. The bear swings its giant arm upward to strike him. He lands safely in a low stance and holds his sword tightly. He thinks that if he wants to advance smoothly in tomorrow's tournament, he must defeat this monster tonight by any means necessary. He dashes forward and jumps into the air. He slashes his sword at the bear's neck. Chengdu notices that thick fur protects its neck and thinks that the neck is not the weak point. He bounces back and realizes the head is not the weak point either. He stares at the beast and thinks that the monster can attack and defend perfectly. He wonders if he really has to wait until the beast exhausts itself. Chengdu runs forward with blue energy as the giant bear swings his weapon down at him. Chengdu dodges the heavy attack and swings his sword. Suddenly, Chengdu notices the bear's furry tail moving quickly away from danger. His eyes widen as he realizes the monster is actively protecting its tail. Chengdu leaps backward and creates a plan. He decides to deliberately show an opening and fake an attack toward the bear's head. The bear swings its weapon again. Chengdu waits for the perfect moment. He ducks very low and slides directly under the bear's sweeping attack. The giant weapon passes harmlessly over his head. The bear's eyes widened in surprise as Chengdu quickly thrust his sword upward. A massive blade of blue energy extends from his weapon and slices deeply into the bear's tail. Chengdu states that tonight, he will find out exactly how long the beast can keep hiding its tail. Zhou Xiaogu stands in her room wearing a blue facial mask. She asks Teacher Zheng why he called her so late. Teacher Zheng sits on a couch and asks her if she remembers the Liang City team she warned them about that morning. Ku Zhongtian reports that their Team 2 encountered the Liang City team and was defeated. He states the opponent's name is Chengdu. Ku Zhongtian explains that according to Team 2's report, Chengdu is the biggest obstacle to them winning the championship. Teacher Zheng tells Ku Zhongtian to save his energy. He explains that while other city teams are not a threat, Liang City is actively trying to steal their spot this year. Zhou Xiaogu listens and asks if Chengdu's martial arts stage is at Tier 1 perfect. Teacher Zheng looks down and replies that Chengdu probably has not reached the absolute limit yet. Ku Zhongtian suddenly shouts that Chengdu is definitely at the top tier perfect level and warns them not to underestimate him. Teacher Zheng's narrowed her eyes and realizes that Chengdu is at the exact same martial skill stage as Zhou Xiaogu. Teacher Zheng looks at Zhou Xiaogu and explains that he called to share this information. He asks her how confident she is if she has to fight Chengdu. Zhou Xiaogu reaches up and peels the mask off her face. She smiles calmly and says she will repeat what she always says. She declares that to secure her city's 10th consecutive championship, she will eliminate anyone who stands in her way. The next morning, inside the building, a large screen displays Round 2, Combat Room. A row of chairs sits empty in front of the screen. A man stands before the screen holding a small device announces that the second round of the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament is about to begin. A text explains the tournament bracket. It states that 150 contestants will fight in one-on-one eliminations, leaving 75 contestants. Those 75 contestants will fight in another round of one-on-one eliminations, leaving 37 winners and one person who receives a free pass. 38 contestants will battle until 19 remain, and then the group will be reduced again until only the top 10 advance. Chengdu thinks about the structure of the tournament. He notes that a student must win 4 matches in a row to reach tomorrow's finals. He also remembers that while there is no limit on resting between fights, all 4 matches must be completed within a 5-hour time limit, or the student will automatically lose. Chengdu realizes that his current stamina will only last for 3 matches. He thinks to himself that he must avoid fighting the strongest seeded experts before making it into the top 10. He sighs heavily, admitting that reaching the finals will be a very difficult task. Suddenly, the top fighters react to the news, and the blonde expert remains calm, while Zhou Xiaogu looks slightly surprised. Wu Zhang smiles with a confident smirk, while Chengdu narrows his eyes with intense focus. In the audience, a crowd of students looks up at the screen in complete shock. They shout in disbelief, calling the first match insane and a once-in-a-lifetime miracle matchup. A screen reveals the names. It announces that Zhou Xiaogu from the High City team will fight Wu Zhang from the Lu City team. Wu Zhang smiles and responds confidently with, A screen announces that the first match will decide the champion. The crowd wonders why the 2 strongest fighters, Wu Zhang and Zhou Xiaogu, are fighting each other in the very first match. Chengdu watches the arena and thinks to himself that the tournament is starting to become interesting. A voice announces that both contestants' life strength has been suppressed to level 5. Zhou Xiaogu walks into the fighting area. She holds a spinning bladed weapon in one hand. Wu Zhang stands at the opposite end of the arena. He looks confident and tells Zhou Xiaogu that he has wanted to fight her for a long time. She tells him that after he loses, he can come to her city's high school and she will give him a good job. Wu Zhang looks angry and says he heard she uses the arrogance of a top-tier expert to pressure her opponents. He declares that she will be the one begging today, and quickly draws his sword. Zhou Xiaogu jumps backward as sparks fly around her body. Wu Zhang dashes forward with incredible speed. He swings his sword down as Zhou Xiaogu raises her short sword to block the heavy strike. In the audience, a student points at the broadcast screen and shouts that it shows the fighter's current martial skill levels. Another student looks shocked and asks how the screen can calculate their exact levels. A third student explains that the special assessment uniforms measure their output strength to determine their tier. In the arena, a blue wave of energy crashes down. Zhou Xiaogu raises her weapons to block it. The heavy impact pushes her backward, and she slides across the floor. A system screen showing her martial skill at Tier 1, 92%. Wu Zhang raises his sword behind his head and strikes again. Zhou Xiaogu quickly flips backward in the air to dodge. He looks up, smiles, and analyzes her movements. He thinks to himself that she used a fake move to close the distance for a counterattack. He notices her center of gravity shifting downward and predicts her next strike. Zhou Xiaogu dashes forward with great speed. She leaps and swings a massive blue energy strike down at Wu Zhang. Wu Zhang raises his sword and blocks the heavy blow. A new system screen updates, showing that her martial skill has increased to Tier 1, 95%. Wu Zhang wonders how she blocked his attack so easily. He grips the handle of his sword tightly. Zhou Xiaogu blocks a massive blue energy wave with her crossed weapons. A system screen shows her martial skill level has reached Tier 1, 97%. Wu Zhang dashes forward quickly and realizes she calculated his attack path to continuously block his strikes. He shouts that she really is stronger than him. Chengdu watches the fight and thinks to himself and wonders why she is not stepping back to dodge the attacks. Zhou Xiaogu smiles and announces that the fight is only just getting started. Suddenly, a purple slash cuts through the air. Zhou Xiaogu steps forward and strikes his weapon downward. In the audience, Teacher Ling speaks to Chengdu. He tells Chengdu that even an expert like him might not notice a specific detail. Chengdu looks back and asks what detail he means. Teacher Ling asks if Chengdu knows what weapons she is holding. Chengdu replies that she uses rulers. Teacher Ling explains that her double weapon technique is called the endless strike. He states that fighters usually use one long weapon for attacking and one short weapon for defending. He reveals that because she uses two short weapons, she completely abandons all defense to focus entirely on ultimate offense. Chengdu thinks about Teacher Ling's lessons on close combat. He realizes the endless strike is a powerful skill. Wu Zhang holds his dark weapon tightly. He activates his first stance, called Chaotic Cloak Hammering. Zhou Xiaogu flips backward to dodge the flying debris. Teacher Ling explains her strategy. He says she is trading all of her defense to make her attack stronger. He states that as long as she keeps attacking, she has a chance to win. She has successfully stopped Wu Zhang from launching a real attack since the fight began. Chengdu realizes she is using the endless strike to completely suppress him. Wu Zhang swings his weapon down with great force. He creates a giant blue energy strike and calls out his cloak hammer attack. Zhou Xiaogu looks up at the falling energy as she smiles slightly and says she has finally found him. She dashes forward with incredible speed, moving directly inside Wu Zhang's guard. However, Wu Zhang smiles and looks down at her and says, "Gotcha." He immediately announces and swings his sword horizontally. A massive wave of blue energy strikes Zhou Xiaogu. She crosses her weapons to block the heavy attack, but the force pushes her backward through the air. She grits her teeth and points his sword forward and fires a bright pink energy beam at her. He proudly declares that this space is his domain. Wu Zhang forcefully swings his sword down and tells Zhou Xiaogu that she fell for his trap. Zhou Xiaogu looks up with wide eyes as sweat runs down her face. A system screen appears, showing that Wu Zhang's martial skill has reached 99.9%. A voice notes that his power is practically at the absolute limit. Suddenly, a massive pillar of bright blue energy crashes down onto the arena floor with a loud explosion. After the attack, an observer points out that a figure is still standing inside the dust. In the audience, the students look completely shocked. They ask what is happening and wonder aloud if Zhou Xiaogu has been defeated. A moment ago, Wu Zhang leapt down from above with his sword raised against Zhou Xiaogu. He shouts at her, declaring that her title of being invincible among her peers is now his. Chengdu feels a very strong aura and thinks to himself that it is a good thing he did not fight this opponent yesterday. In the arena, Zhou Xiaogu grips her short sword tightly as blue lightning sparks around her hand. She attacks and is called the Holy King's Staff Technique 4th Stance, drowning the 1,000-man army. A giant wave of water erupts around her. The crowd shouts in surprise as the water swirls. A system screen appears and announces that her martial skill has reached the Tier 1 limit of 100%. In the audience, a student points at the screen in complete shock. He yells that reaching this limit is one of the major steps to becoming a soaring martial artist. He explains she achieved this at only 17 years old. He notes that the last person to do this before the age of 18 is now the principal of a top famous school. Back in the arena, a sword is stabbed into the floor. Wu Zhang stands behind Zhou Xiaogu with his head lowered. He looks defeated and angrily admits that she wins. Chengdu watches this end with disappointment and thinks to himself that they should have fought a difficult deathmatch so he could easily pick off the weakened winner. In the audience, a man says he now understands why the principal hid his daughter's true power. Principal Zhou smiles and explains that she just broke her limit last week. He says he kept it a secret because revealing her power early would hurt the fighting spirit of the other students. He adds that fighting spirit is very important for student growth. Nearby, a man with white hair smiles and praises Zhou Xiaogu's outstanding talent. He mentions that her father is an official at the Extreme Martial Palace, so she will likely go to Black Dragon Martial Arts University. He also notes that Wu Zhang is strong and has already secured early admission to Tianfeng Martial Arts University. He says their Qilin Martial Arts University was too slow and wonders if there are any other good students left to recruit. The man replies that they only need geniuses. A screen flashes to announce the next duel. Two swords strike each other and, in the audience, a student yawns and says he is almost falling asleep because it is boring. Another student agrees. He explains that after watching the intense fight between Zhou Xiaogu and Wu Zhang, these other matches look like weak rookies fighting. A large screen displays the next matchup. Liang City Team's Chengdu versus Wang City Team's Judaran. A student in the crowd points and yells with an excited expression. He announces that Chengdu, the student who fought the wolf den alone, is entering the arena. He shouts that this will finally be a decent match. Chengdu walks onto the stage calmly. He thinks about his opponent. He realizes that Judaran is the person with the highest combat power from the group that collected all their badges first yesterday. Judaran walks onto the stage with his eyes closed. Chengdu watches him and thinks this opponent is interesting. Judaran sighs and says he did not expect the other fighters to be so strong. He states that he can only scrape by into the top 10. Chengdu rests his sword on his shoulder. He smiles slightly and tells Ju Darren that he seems very confident in himself. Ju Darren pulls his sword slightly from its scabbard. He looks back over his shoulder at Chengdu and says he heard about Chengdu fighting the wolf den alone and calls it amazing. However, he questions how much of Chengdu's strength and condition still remains today after that fierce battle. Suddenly, Ju Darren dashes forward at high speed. A blue motion blur follows his body. He swings his sword downward, creating a bright purple energy slash. Chengdu quickly raises his sword and blocks the heavy strike. Sparks fly into the air as the weapons collide. A system screen displays the match between Chengdu and Ju Darren. Both fighters are listed at Tier 1, 90%. Someone in the crowd shouts in surprise, calling Ju Darren another hidden perfect level expert. Ju Darren smiles confidently and asks Chengdu if he is trying to decide the outcome quickly because he is afraid of lacking endurance. Ju Darren swings his sword downward and uses the Muramasa blade technique first stance, invisible edge. A system screen shows Ju Darren's martial arts index has reached 96%. The strike hits Chengdu, forcing him to grit his teeth as he slides backward across the floor. Ju Darren spins and attacks again using both hands. Chengdu thinks that the strength type technique lacks flexibility because it relies on the left hand. Chengdu realizes that his opponent thinks he is still injured from yesterday. He notes that Ju Darren wants to fight a war of attrition to exhaust him. He dashes forward and thinks that Ju Darren's plan would have worked if he did not have the recovery ability of his crystal space. Chengdu decides he must end the battle quickly, with no hesitation. Ju Darren watches Chengdu charge. He questions why Chengdu is using a thrust-type martial art so openly. Ju Darren warns Chengdu not to underestimate him for trying to break through head-on. Ju Darren swings his sword to unleash an attack called the Muramasa blade technique 4th stance, Crescent Moon Sky Piercer. At the same time, Chengdu thrusts his sword forward and uses the flowing light sword art 2nd stance, Golden Prums ringing to the heavens. A system screen showing Chengdu's martial arts index is now at 99.3%. The force of the blast throws Ju Darren backward across the arena. Ju Darren looks shocked and terrified. Blood drips from his trembling hand. He asks how Chengdu's strength is possible. Suddenly, Chengdu sends his next attack and says, painting the ground as a prison. Ju Darren lies defeated on the ground in a cloud of dust. Chengdu stands victorious over him. He thinks about Zhou Xiaogu and admits she is too strong right now. He explains that he finished his own match quickly, so he could avoid fighting her. In the audience, a man with white hair notes that Chengdu's martial arts did not reach 99.3%. He asks if the boy's strength comes from high mental power. A man in a blue cap replies that Chengdu's mental power is only at level 9, which is just a passing grade. The white-haired man closes his eyes and wishes Chengdu had reached level 10 to awaken a martial soul. The man in the cap sweats slightly and lists the requirements for their Keelin class. A student must have level 11 life intensity before age 18, level 10 mental power, or tier 1 limit martial arts. He gestures with his hand and says their goal is to find the best geniuses. He admits that Chengdu falls short in both mental power and martial arts. The two men look down at the stage. The man in the cap says Chengdu is still a good candidate. He suggests they meet with Chengdu tonight to sign a letter of intent. Outside, some female smiles and says that she is looking forward to the finals tomorrow, and the second round of the competition is finally over. Later, Chengdu sits cross-legged on a bed in his hotel room. He thinks about his strategy for the day. He explains that he used the battle duration rule to completely avoid fighting Zhou Xiaogu in all 4 rounds, which allowed him to advance smoothly. Chengdu thinks that real combat is very effective for improving life strength. He notes that his power was just a little bit short last night, but now he feels confident he can wipe out the bear monsters. Chengdu rests his sword over his shoulder, and a system screen appears. It announces that his life strength has successfully increased from level 5.8 to level 5.9. Chengdu smiles brightly and clenches his fist and thinks to himself that his life strength has finally leveled up. He notes that his feeling was correct, and that the battle with the BB Wolves and his 4 duel rounds today played a big part in his improvement. In the icy environment, a large monster appears. Chengdu smiles and decides to use these creatures to test the power of his recent 0.1 strength increase. Suddenly, Chengdu opens his eyes wide in surprise. His cell phone vibrates and buzzes on the bed behind him. He looks back over his shoulder at the glowing screen. He wonders if it is a message from Teacher Ling. Chengdu opens his hotel room door. He looks surprised and asks his teacher if something is wrong. He walks into the room. Teacher Ling sits on a sofa and pours tea. 2 unknown men sit on the opposite sofa. Teacher Ling tells Chengdu to sit. He introduces the two men as Teacher Yu and Teacher Peng. He explains that they are from the Special Recruitment Office of Qilin Martial Arts University. Chengdu looks completely shocked and thinks to himself that Qilin is one of the world's top 3 institutions, just like Black Dragon and Heavenly Phoenix universities. The man in the blue cap explains that they recruit students for the special Qilin class. The white-haired man adds that the Qilin class holds the most concentrated resources in their school. He states these resources are used to train the strongest soaring martial artists. Chengdu tells the men that he does not meet their recruitment requirements. He asks why the school specifically requires level 10 spiritual power, first tier limit martial skills, and level 11 life strength before the age of 18. The man notes that Chengdu's teacher has not told him about the hidden treasures. The man explains that when a person becomes a martial artist, a hidden treasure automatically opens in their body. This treasure absorbs stellar energy and increases spiritual power. He reveals that if a student meets one of the strict recruitment requirements before becoming a martial artist, 2 hidden treasures will open at the same time. The recruiter explains that if a student's martial skills and spiritual power both meet the requirements at the same time, they might open 3 hidden treasures. The man states there are a total of 10 hidden treasures, which act like passive skills that give extra power attributes. He notes that having more treasures is better. The man in the blue cap smiles and explains that opening double hidden treasures at level 10 makes someone a genius, and opening triple hidden treasures makes someone a peerless genius. The white-haired man tells Chengdu that even though he has not reached the recruitment limit yet, he has great potential. He says they want Chengdu to sign a C-rank letter of intent to become a reserve candidate for the Qilin class. The white-haired man taps his smartwatch, and a screen pops up in the air. He explains that students cannot apply directly to the top 3 schools. Instead, the schools use contract-based recruitment to scout for geniuses. The man in the blue cap smiles and adds that after signing, they will immediately give Chengdu 1 million in resources. This includes chi and blood medicines, gym sparring partners, and spiritual refinement pills. The white-haired man looks at Chengdu and says that if he meets the requirements before becoming a martial artist, his contract will automatically upgrade to B rank, allowing him to enter the Qilin class if a spot is open. Chengdu asks the recruiters if his family can move and settle down there with him if he signs the contract. The white-haired recruiter says no. He explains that there is a strict rule requiring families to stay in their current homes for safety. He states that only authorized martial artists can travel freely. Chengdu closes his eyes and apologizes to the teachers. He tells them they wasted their trip because he already chose a school. The recruiters open their eyes wide in complete shock. The man in the blue cap asks if he chose Black Dragon or Heavenly Phoenix. Chengdu calmly replies that he chose Huangshan Martial Arts University. The man in the blue cap sweats and stares in disbelief. He is shocked that Chengdu picked a school weaker than theirs. Chengdu explains that monster invasions happen everywhere, so he must stay close to protect his family. The white-haired man tells Chengdu that the chance of entering the Qilin class is extremely low. He adds that over half of all soaring martial artists come from the top 3 schools. The white-haired man raises his hand and advises Chengdu to aim higher to truly protect his family. He explains that a genius has much more influence and power in the world than an ordinary person. Chengdu smiles calmly and thanks the teachers for valuing his potential. However, he tells them that he will pass on the contract. Teacher Ling looks at the other teacher and asks if he is going to say something. Teacher Ling smiles with a drop of sweat on his face and tells Chengdu that taking advice is good, but there is nothing wrong with walking his own path. He encourages Chengdu to do his best in the competition tomorrow. Teacher Ling then lowers his head. He thinks to himself that he and the principal must still figure out a way to persuade Chengdu to join them. In the Zhou family training ground, Zhou Xiaogu wears a white martial arts uniform. She holds a long silver staff in her hands. She steps forward and swings the heavy staff with great power and speed. She swings a silver staff wrapped in bright blue energy toward a figure. She opens her mouth wide and shouts loudly. Suddenly, a hand reaches out. The hand easily catches the fast-moving staff using only 2 fingers. A man tells Zhou Xiaogu that she has been hitting him for 3 hours already. He advises her to take a rest. Zhou Xiaogu throws her staff onto the ground and stomps away. She angrily thinks to herself that her father is stupid and declares that she will defeat him one day. Zhou Xiaogu puffs out her cheeks and pouts her lips while looking away. Her father tells her that before she tries to defeat him, she needs to think about how to win the championship tomorrow. Zhou Xiaogu smiles brightly and explains that she still has more powerful trump cards that she has not shown yet. She firmly declares that the championship will definitely belong to Hai Cheng. In the Hai City No. 1 high school, inside, Teacher Ling and Chengdu walk down a bright hallway. Suddenly, Chengdu stops and looks back over his shoulder. He notices that someone is watching him. From another room, the principal and a man observe him. The man smiles and calls Chengdu a sharp kid. He notes that Chen Du's level 9 spiritual power allowed him to sense their gaze so quickly, and he praises the boy's impressive abilities. Teacher Ling waves and smiles as Chen Du walks toward the arena. The teacher announces that the 10-person battle draw is starting and wishes Chen Du good luck. As Chen Du walks calmly, he reviews the rules for the upcoming matches. The first phase is the challenge battle, where the bottom 5 students must challenge the top 5 students. The second phase is the gauntlet battle, where one student fights against a team of opponents one by one. The student with the highest total score will win the championship. Chen Du realizes that the gauntlet battle will be the hardest part of the competition. He knows his current stamina will only allow him to fight 3 matches. He concludes that if he is forced to fight Zhou Xiaogu during the gauntlet battle, he will definitely lose the tournament. A screen displays the upcoming match schedule. A voice expresses shock that Chen Du from the Liang City team is matched against Ku Zhongtian from the Hai City team in the second round. Chen Du looks calm and thinks to himself that this is exactly what he wants. He plans to test his newly upgraded sword art against this specific opponent. In the audience, students discuss the fight. One student says Ku Zhongtian is a hidden card and predicts Chen Du will lose. Another student agrees and mentions that Ku Zhongtian has only ever drawn his sword to fight Zhou Xiaogu. The recruiter in the blue cap states that if Chen Du can force Ku Zhongtian to draw his sword, it will mean something. The white-haired recruiter finishes the thought, adding that this would prove Chen Du has the qualifications for early admission into the Qilin class. An announcement declares the start of the second match. Ku Zhongtian stands calmly with his large box strapped to his back. Chen Du observes him and notes that his appearance has not changed since they met yesterday. Chen Du thinks that it is impossible to tell Ku Zhongtian's real martial arts level or the specific skills he uses. Because of this, Chen Du decides to wait and observe his opponent's moves first. Ku Zhongtian reaches over his shoulder and grabs the handle of a sword sticking out from the golden box. He smiles gently with his eyes closed and tells Chen Du that he knew they were destined to cross swords. 2 swords clash together, creating a bright flash of light and sparks. Chen Du pushes his black sword against Ku Zhongtian's silver sword. Chen Du looks down and wonders what kind of move this is. Ku Zhongtian explains that it is an area Chen Du has not experienced yet, which is called technique. The silver sword presses harder against the black blade. Ku Zhongtian states that an example of this technique is using a single point to break a larger surface. Chen Du slides backward from the impact. He realizes that Ku Zhongtian diverted half of his attack's power along the edge of his sword. The 2 fighters then exchange many rapid strikes. Ku Zhongtian tells Chen Du to increase the fight's intensity to 90%. He swings his sword down, creating a giant orange energy slash, and shouts that they are not done yet. Chen Du quickly raises his glowing sword horizontally above his head to block the heavy attack. He grits his teeth and thinks to himself that it is getting harder to defend against the strikes. Chen Du wonders what his opponent will do if the limit is exceeded. A blue system screen appears, showing that the martial skill index has reached 99.2%. Chen Du states that he needs to take things a little more seriously. Ku Zhongtian asks if Chen Du is finally showing his true colors. Chen Du holds his sword horizontally in front of his face and declares that he will end the fight in an instant. Ku Zhongtian smiles confidently with his eyes closed and replies that he would love to see what Chen Du calls instant. Chen Du leaps forward through the air and announces his attack, the flowing light sword technique, 4th form, Azure Dragon Hello. Ku Zhongtian holds his sword up to defend himself and decides he has no time to block and must dodge instead. Chen Du brings his sword down and calls out the 2nd form, Golden Prums, ringing to the heavens. Ku Zhongtian realizes that Chen Du changed his attack form in mid-air. Suddenly, Chen Du switches to the 3rd form, Breeze in the Forest. Multiple orange energy beams shoot downward. Ku Zhongtian raises his sword to block the rapid strikes. Chen Du simply says goodbye, and a massive blue energy slash quickly cuts diagonally through the air. Chen Du holds his sword and breathes out a small sigh of relief. A system screen appears and announces that his martial arts index has reached 100%, which is the absolute limit. In the audience, a student with wide eyes looks completely shocked. He says that a 100% limit is something he has never seen before. The crowd cheers loudly and throws their arms into the air. The students talk among themselves in excitement. They state that Chen Du hid his true strength the entire time. They believe the current champion of the tournament might be defeated now, and they call Chen Du an unexpected dark horse. Chen Du smiles calmly and looks down at his opponent. He simply says the word "you." Ku Zhongtian sits on the ground and holds his torn shirt over his stomach. He wonders if Chen Du truly reached the Tier 1 limit. He questions this because he did not sense the specific intent of the 4-style sublimation from Chen Du's attack at all. Chen Du then states that he is leaving. A system screen appears and announces that Chen Du from the Liangcheng squad is the winner. Chen Du makes a flat. He thinks to himself that Ku Jungtian was only trying to gather intelligence for his teammates. He tells his defeated opponent to keep dreaming. In the audience, a man sweats as he thinks about Chengdu's progress. He wonders how Chengdu managed to improve his martial arts skill from 99% to 100% in just one day. He explains that this requires passing a threshold of 10 small increments and cannot believe it is possible. The recruiter asks the white-haired recruiter if something specific just happened. The white-haired man replies that it is highly unlikely. He explains that it would be too exaggerated to be true, and he trails off while mentioning the word martial. A man approaches the two recruiters and asks Yu Zhong and Peng Fei why they did not tell him they were coming to watch the match. The white-haired man replies that he would not have known they were in the city if someone had not informed him this morning. The recruiter in the blue cap smiles and congratulates the man in the gray jacket. He states that the man's daughter should have already received a grade B letter of intent from Black Dragon Martial Arts University. The man replies that his daughter only has a tiny bit of potential to become a skywalking martial artist. He then changes the subject to Chengdu. He smiles and calls the boy quite outstanding. He states that Chengdu's upcoming matches will be very interesting to watch. Unseen voices in the crowd discuss the tournament. One person expresses shock that a senior named Valo lost right after Ku Jungtian's defeat. Another voice replies that no one could have predicted the opponent would achieve a breakthrough right in the middle of the battle. Zhou Xiaogu dashes forward and swings a silver staff. She spits a small stick from her mouth. A system screen announces that Zhou Xiaogu of the Haicheng squad has won. In the audience, a student says Zhou Xiaogu is too strong because she ended the battle in 1 second. He states that her performance proves she can completely destroy Chengdu. He adds that he was wrong to ever worry about her losing. Chengdu thinks to himself that the first round has ended and the second round's gauntlet match is starting right away. He wonders who she will select to fight next. A large screen displays Zhou Xiaogu's name. Audience members say the champion will be crowned soon and that they expect her to defeat all 4 of her opponents easily. Zhou Xiaogu announces that the first contestant she will challenge is Chengdu from the Liangcheng squad. Chengdu thinks to himself that Zhou Xiaogu is truly strong and confident. He smiles and turns to face her. He draws his sword and thinks that this tough challenge is exactly what he wants. A screen system announces that her martial arts index is at 100%. Zhou Xiaogu leaps high into the air and swings her staff down toward Chengdu. A person shouts in shock as they ask if she is using her full martial arts power to instantly kill Chengdu right at the start of the match. Chengdu grips his sword with both hands as he notes that this is the limit intent, which sublimates the move with extraordinary, almost metaphysical power. Zhou Xiaogu swings her weapon downward with great force. She calls out her attack, the Holy King, staff technique, 4th style, flooding the 1,000 armies. A massive wave of water crashes down onto the arena. Chengdu stands inside the rushing water and uses his hand to deflect the powerful attack. A system screen announces that Chengdu's martial arts index has reached 100%. Zhou Xiaogu thinks to herself that he must be going all out now. She states that, as expected, he actually has some skills. Chengdu stands in the arena and holds his sword with both hands. A bright blue aura suddenly flares up and surrounds his entire body. Teacher Ling watches from the sidelines. He smiles widely with an excited expression and says that Chengdu actually did it. In the stands, the recruiter sweats heavily and states that he was not mistaken earlier. He explains that this energy is level 10 spiritual power, and he reveals that Chengdu's soul has already evolved into a martial soul. Chengdu's soul has already advanced into a martial soul. He decides to make a preemptive strike. He dashes forward with extreme speed. Zhou Xiaogu watches his rapid approach and thinks to herself that his speed is much faster than it was just a moment ago. She quickly flips backward through the air to dodge the incoming slashes. Chengdu immediately spins his body around to pursue her. Zhou Xiaogu raises her silver staff to block the incoming strike. She grits her teeth and a drop of sweat falls down her cheek as she thinks to herself that his physical power has become much heavier. She wonders if this heavy force is the direct effect of his martial soul attachment. Chengdu presses forward aggressively. Zhou Xiaogu dashes forward and swings her silver staff. Chengdu tightly grips his sword handle and watches her with sharp eyes. Their weapons crash together, creating bright sparks and flashes of light. The strong impact forces Zhou Xiaogu backward. She sweats and thinks to herself that her center of gravity is broken, realizing she must adjust her stance. Her foot slides across the floor as she struggles to balance. Chengdu stares intently at her. He notices her mistake and thinks that her fighting rhythm is messed up. He decides that as long as he does not give her a chance to stand firm, he will win the match. Chengdu instantly attacks with incredible speed. He unleashes a relentless barrage of bright blue, curved sword slashes, while Zhou Xiaogu retreats and tries to defend herself against the heavy assault. Chengdu realizes that he can win this fight. He steps his foot firmly onto the arena floor. Surrounded by bright blue energy, Chengdu charges forward with his glowing sword. He confidently states that he can defeat Zhou Xiaogu. In the audience, two men watch the match with excited expressions. One man smiles and explains that Chengdu used his level 10 mental power to push his martial arts index perfectly to 100%. He notes that the boy hid his true strength very deeply. The second man looks shocked with his mouth wide open. He admits he planned to comfort Chengdu after a loss, but now he changes his plan and prepares for Chengdu to win the championship. The man raises his fist and cheers loudly for Chengdu to beat his opponent. Nearby, the recruiter smiles and clenches his fist. He announces that they must upgrade Chengdu's contract to a B level. He tells his partner that they will have to swallow their pride and asks the boy to sign the contract again. A man hears this and wonders if Chengdu actually rejected their recruitment offer the day before. The recruiter in the blue cap leans his head back and looks toward the principal. He asks how the principal can remain so calm when he cares for his daughter so much. He states that unless something unexpected happens, Zhou Xiaogu is definitely going to lose the match. The man smiles confidently and states that unless there is an accident, Zhou Xiaogu will lose. But then he quickly adds that an accident is about to happen. In the arena, the staff and the sword clash heavily together. Chengdu's eyes widened in shock. He thinks to himself that Zhou Xiaogu's power and speed are suddenly completely different. Zhou Xiaogu speaks to him, stating that he is very good. She tells Chengdu that even her strict father would consider him a genius. She grips her weapon and proudly declares that she is a genius among geniuses. Chengdu realizes the truth and thinks to himself that she has awakened a martial soul. He notes that she possesses both Tier 1 limit martial arts and level 10 mental power at the same time. Zhou Xiaogu swings her staff forward with immense force. A massive wave of energy crashes down across the arena. Chengdu is pushed backward as he uses his sword to block the heavy, glowing strike. Chengdu swings his sword forward and thinks to himself that he must be fast, faster, and even faster. Zhou Xiaogu's silver staff crashes heavily against his sword blade, creating bright blue sparks. Chengdu stands firm, surrounded by an intense aura, and holds his sword horizontally above his head to block her powerful strike. Zhou Xiaogu continues to attack fiercely. Chengdu blocks another heavy downward strike from her staff. The immense force pushes Chengdu, making his foot slide backward across the smooth floor. Suddenly, Zhou Xiaogu eyes wide in complete shock. Chengdu quickly counterattacks by swinging his sword upward. He unleashes a massive, rushing wave of blue energy that crashes directly into Zhou Xiaogu, forcing her to block with her staff as the impact pushes her backward. The weapons heavily hit the ground as Chengdu lowers his head and sweats. Zhou Xiaogu asks why his power has weakened. She asks if he is out of strength. She stares at him with a serious expression and says the fight is over. She thinks to herself that his performance was a pleasant surprise, but it is still not enough to defeat her. Chengdu smiles slightly and tells her that she does not get to decide if the battle is finished. Zhou Xiaogu quickly swings her silver staff forward with a fierce look. Suddenly, Chengdu's face turns dark. He unleashes a sudden counterattack and shouts the names of his moves, Mental Shock and War Stomp. Chengdu shouts the names of his attacks, Mental Shock and War Stomp. Zhou Xiaogu realizes why his physical strength felt weaker a moment ago. She understands that he moved all the power of his martial soul directly into his eyes. A powerful blast of blue energy hits her. She is thrown backward and loses her balance. Zhou Xiaogu grips her staff but looks completely confused. She thinks to herself that Chengdu actually possesses exceptional mental power. She realizes that she is now trapped inside an illusion created by his mental attack. Blue energy continues to swirl around her body. A drop of sweat runs down her face as she looks nervous. Suddenly, she turns her head in surprise and wonders what the strange sound is. Inside the mental illusion, a giant monster looms over Zhou Xiaogu. Zhou Xiaogu stands firmly on the ground and holds her metal staff as she looks up at the massive beast. Suddenly, intense lightning and energy explode around her body. She grips her staff tightly with both hands, looking strained but determined to fight the illusion. In the real world, Chengdu's sword floats in the air, completely covered in bright blue flames. In the audience, the students tell senior sister Zhou to stop acting and to hurry up and move. Another student holds a red cross and prays. Someone in the crowd shouts that she cannot lose and believes there will definitely be a turnaround. Back in the arena, Zhou Xiaogu stands completely frozen. A massive slash quickly cuts through the air right in front of her face. Chengdu looks at her and says, "Zhou Xiaogu, this time it's truly the end." The recruiter grinds his teeth and states that he will remember Chengdu. Nearby, the recruiter explains that Chengdu learned mental martial arts by himself. He says this proves Chengdu's mental power can easily rise above level 15. The man states that if Chengdu's life intensity increases, he will become a soaring martial artist. He classifies Chengdu as a quasi-A-class talent. He asks if they should give Chen-du an A-class letter of intent right away. He reminds his partner that A-class students are very rare. The recruiter agrees and says Chen-du already has strategic level potential. However, he explains that offering A-class and S-class contracts requires permission from their principal. He turns away and tells the white-haired man to come with him. He says they must contact the principal to fight for what Chen-du wants. The recruiter asks his principal if the plan is possible. A voice from the hologram replies. The voice finds it interesting that a prospective martial artist wants to protect his family. The hologram reveals an older man with a white beard and glasses. He is Peng Tianwen, the principal of Qilin Martial Arts University. The principal states that he trusts the two recruiters. He agrees it is reasonable to give Chen-du an A-class letter of intent based on his skills. The principal states that bringing a family to the first biosphere breaks the rules of the high martial arts civilization. The recruiter explains that the other two top universities have already signed students with A-class contracts this year. He adds that their school has only just discovered a quasi-A-class student like Chen-du. The recruiter points his finger and tells the principal that if they sign Chen-du early and increase his life intensity, they will have a chance in the upcoming three-school freshman tournament. He firmly states that their school cannot finish in third place every year. The principal touches his head and tells the recruiters to wait for his reply while he thinks about the decision. At the competition venue in the afternoon, Chen-du stands on a wooden podium. A man places a gold medal around his neck. An announcement declares that Chen-du is the champion of the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament. It states that a student from Liang City has won for the first time and created history. Chen-du swinging his sword at a giant dark monster. He thinks to himself that if he had not defeated the bears in the crystal space last night, his mental power would not have reached level 10 to learn the War Stomp attack. Chen-du realizes that if he fought Zhou Xiaogu again, she would not give him time to charge his power or let him get so close. He admits he would definitely lose a rematch. Finally, Chen-du thinks that there are no ifs, and he has successfully won. In the principal's office at High City No. 1 High School, Principal Zhou stands behind his desk and says, "Please come in." A woman steps through the open door. She states that he always wanted to meet Chen-du after the match. She asks why he did not attend the award ceremony, noting that everyone has already left. Principal Zhou pinches the bridge of his nose with his hand. He simply replies that he will meet Chen-du next time. The woman listens carefully. He tells her that in a few months, he will return to the Extreme Martial Palace. He instructs her to pass a message to the other three, Star Deacons. Principal Zhou announces that the dynasty plan is officially launched. The woman firmly replies, "Yes." In the apartment building on a bright sunny day, inside, a dining table is filled with many plates of hot food. Chen-du's father holds a red can and laughs. He praises his son and says, "Son, winning the championship for Liang City this time. Well done." The rest of the family sits around the table. Chen-du's mother smiles kindly and says, "Congratulations, champion." His sister looks at him and adds, "Bro, you winning the championship has caused a huge sensation in our Liang City." Chen-du smiles warmly at his family. He replies, "I got a lot of prize money this time. Our family won't have to worry about money anymore." Chen-du thinks to himself that being with his family is true happiness. Later, Chen-du and his sister walk together outside on a paved walkway. His sister looks up and asks, "Why did you suddenly decide to live at school?" His sister smiles cheerfully as she walks beside him. She explains that she decided to live at school so she can work hard and improve her strength, just like him. She states that as his biological sister, she absolutely cannot bring shame to their family. Chen-du smiles back at her in the warm evening light. He tells her to work really hard and not waste the time he spends taking her to school. Suddenly, Chen-du stops walking and plants his foot firmly on the paved path. His sister turns her head in confusion and calls out to him. She smiles playfully and asks if his fans have come to block his way. Suddenly, she notices something, and a monster named Silver Demon appears directly on the street. Chen-du wonders how it could appear on the streets. He asks himself if Liang City has fallen to an attack. Chen-du narrows his eyes and quickly touches his black smartwatch. He thinks to himself that there was no invasion alarm, so the city has not fallen. He realizes that monsters might have been hiding inside the city all along. Chen-du's eyes widen in shock as he looks at the creature's back. He counts 8 sharp barbs and realizes the monster's life intensity is at level 8. He opens his mouth wide and screams for his sister to run. Suddenly, the silver demon leapt from the ground. Chen-du looks highly worried as he surveys the damaged city area in the evening light. He curses in his mind and notes that his sword is at home. He realizes he must find a weapon immediately. Chen-du runs over a pile of broken concrete and debris. He spots a thick metal pole sticking out of the rubble. He tightly grips the pole and pulls it free from the rocks. He thinks to himself that he can only use this object to fight. Chen-du stands in a combat stance holding the metal pole with both hands. Suddenly, he shouts the name of his attack, Flowing Light Sword Art. breeze in the forest. He thrusts the steel rebar upward, creating a massive explosion of bright blue energy against the monster. However, Chengdu looks strained and realizes that the steel rebar has no flexibility, so his attack stance was not fully executed. The silver demon fist quickly swings down again. It violently smashes into Chengdu's crossed arms. He skids across the ground and lands in a low crouch. He grips the metal pole tightly and looks desperate. He thinks that the monster's life intensity is 2.1 levels higher than his own. He realizes that without a proper weapon, he cannot beat the creature at all. He decides that since he cannot win, his only option is to look for a chance to run away. The monster reaches its large hand forward. Chengdu yells for the monster not to move. His sister steps forward and stands bravely on the street. She shouts at the monster to attack her if it has the guts, and warns it not to hurt her brother. Chengdu's eyes widened in shock. He panics as the monster looms over his sister. Chengdu dashes forward with incredible speed. He screams in anger, telling the monster to get lost and not to touch his sister. He unleashes a mental attack called War Stomp. The giant monster suddenly flinches and freezes in place. Chengdu glares forward as a purple aura radiates from his body. A system screen appears. It announces that Chengdu's flowing light sword art has improved from tier 199% to tier 1991%. Chengdu smiles slightly and thinks to himself that this is comprehension by analogy. He realizes that even a simple steel rebar can be used as a longsword. Chengdu heavily strikes the monster with the metal pole. Suddenly, the steel rebar shatters into small pieces in his hand because of the extreme force. Chengdu's eyes widen in shock as drop of sweat forms on his face. Chengdu strikes forward with rude, shattering sharp rocks into pieces upon impact. Chengdu stares at his empty hand as a piece of the broken steel rebar falls through the air. Suddenly, Chengdu looks urgently at his smartwatch and orders his assistant, Little Bear, to send a distress signal. Suddenly, the monster leaps through the air and smashes into the ground with great force, sending debris flying. Chengdu looks back in shock. He thinks to himself that the creature is moving even faster than before. He realizes that there is no time left to call the City Defense Corps for help. Chengdu thinks to himself that if the monster's heavy punch does not kill him instantly, he will use the force of the impact to throw his sister safely out of the way. Suddenly, his eyes wide open. Someone attacking from behind pierces the dark monster into pieces. Chengdu sweats and looks shocked by the sudden rescue. A muscular man reports that the target has been eliminated and there are no casualties. The man smiles at the students and asks if they are okay. He introduces himself as Hu Qiang from the City Defense Corps. He explains that they received a report from a citizen about the monster, and he is glad he arrived in time to save them. Chengdu's sister holds her hand to her chest in relief and calls out to her brother. Chengdu thanks the man for his help and introduces himself as Chengdu, a student from Liang City No. 1 High School. The woman complains that she did not know Chengdu knew a mental-type martial art. She explains that Chengdu's attack directly severed her control over the silver demon monster, which almost caused a real accident. The principal looks at her calmly. He tells her this proves she has not practiced her martial arts enough. He explains that he already arranged for Ling Yun and Hu Qiang to stay nearby to ensure everyone's safety. The principal looks down and states that he hopes this arranged encounter will make Chengdu understand something important. In the martial arts room, building glowing against the night sky. Inside his room, Chengdu sits on the floor leaning against the wall. He looks at the screen projecting from his watch. His sister sends a message asking about his injuries. Chengdu replies that he is fine and tells her to keep it a secret from their parents. He then transfers 1,000 yuan to her account. His sister replies that Uncle Hu Qiang also told her to keep the secret, and she calls her brother handsome. Chengdu rests his arm on his knee and closes his eyes with a tired expression. Chengdu suddenly opens his eyes wide and tightly clenches his injured fist and realizes that he was too naive. Chengdu realizes that danger has always been right beside him. The monster swings a massive dark fist down toward him. Chengdu looks up at the attack and thinks about his future. He realizes that if a real disaster happens, he would not have time to save his family even if he stays close and studies at Mount Huang Martial Arts University. Chengdu admits that he is too weak. He notes that the silver demon had a low martial arts level but still crushed him easily because of its high life intensity. Chengdu gritting his teeth in frustration. He states that life intensity is the foundation of everything. He understands that improving it requires massive resources, exactly like the ones offered at Qilin Martial Arts University. Chengdu admits that his previous plan was too simple and that merely staying by his family's side is not enough. He declares that he must improve his strength at the fastest speed possible. He wants to become so strong that he can completely destroy all enemies before they even have a chance to attack. Suddenly, a doorbell rings at the door. The principal stands at the door with a smile. He holds a small red box and asks Chengdu if he is bothering him at this late hour. Chengdu stands in the room and asks why the principal is visiting. The principal hands the box to Chengdu. He explains it is a special gift to thank him for his situation. Chengdu looks confused and asks why he is being thanked. The principal explains that Chengdu gave him and Mayor Wang something to look forward to during the tournament. The principal says they only expected Chengdu to reach the top 10. Instead, Chengdu exceeded their expectations and won Liang City's first championship. The principal explains, this victory improved the school's ability to recruit talent and also advanced his own career. The principal asks if he shouldn't thank Chengdu for this success. Chengdu holds the red box with both hands, looks down calmly, and thanks the principal. A hand reaches into a bright refrigerator and pulls out a bottle of water. Chengdu holds the water bottle and looks curious. He asks the principal how he is so familiar with this martial arts room. The principal replies that this specific room, room 001, originally belonged to him. Chengdu looks surprised by this answer. The principal looks at Chengdu and asks why his clothes are so dirty. He says it looks like Chengdu was rolling on the ground. Chengdu remembers that Hu Qiang told him to keep the monster attack a secret. Chengdu decides that telling the principal does not count as breaking that promise. Chengdu tells the principal that something is making him feel uneasy. The principal looks confused, and a drop of sweat appears on his head. Chengdu tells the principal that he encountered a level 8 silver demon tonight. He asks why there are dangerous monsters inside the city where people live. The principal reacts with extreme shock. 3 exaggerated, panicked versions of his face appear as he yells. He asks if Chengdu is hurt anywhere. However, principal secretly thinks that he was waiting for Chengdu to ask this exact question. Chengdu raises both hands and smiles nervously to calm the principal down. He says he is fine. Chengdu asks what the secret is and why he has never heard about this before. The principal explains that this is a secret only martial artists are allowed to know. He warns that if ordinary people learn the truth, there will be consequences. Chengdu opens his eyes wide and asks what will happen. The principal states firmly that the order of the entire high martial arts civilization will collapse.
The next day, Chengdu steps out of a glowing blue portal. He asks if this place is outside the 7th biosphere. The principal stands next to him and asks if the area is different from what he imagined. Chengdu touches his chin and explains that he expected to see a bloody battlefield, not an isolated, empty place. The principal looks forward and asks Chengdu how human strength compares to the monsters. Chengdu replies that logically, the invaders should be stronger. However, he notes that humans are fighting 3 alien civilizations at the same time. He believes humans would be stronger in a one-on-one fight. The principal asks Chengdu what he would think if he told him Earth has never been invaded. Chengdu looks completely shocked and sweats heavily. He asks about the cities that were destroyed in the past. The principal states that the news reports of cities being wiped out by aliens are true. He explains that it was not an invasion, but rather the aliens were simply passing by. The principal points his finger at the empty land. He says there are no resources outside the biosphere. He explains that humans built the biospheres hundreds of years ago specifically to hide from the aliens and avoid becoming food. The principal explains that all 9 great biospheres share this tiny piece of land on a single tectonic plate. He states that because the land is completely barren, the alien civilizations ignore it. He concludes that this lack of resources is the only reason humanity has a chance to survive. The principal explains that humans must continue to develop, so they go into alien territories to steal resources. He states this is the reason why the death rate for martial artists is so high. The principal says the 7th biosphere is lucky because it fights the hunter civilization, which is considered the weakest. He explains that the 3rd and 5th biospheres face the stronger Big Eye and Giant civilizations. Because they face more pressure, their schools came here to find more students. Chengdu touches his chin and suggests that if all 9 human biospheres unite, they should be strong enough to defeat the aliens. The principal looks up and says this idea of winning a confrontation is a lie created by the media. The principal explains that humans can fight small battles, but if full civilizations collide, a united human race could not even defeat the weakest alien group. The principal states that humanity is divided into 9 biospheres, so they do not put all their eggs in one basket. The principal notes that humanity grew stronger over the past century after 3 great heroes named Yan, Durogs, and Ryan appeared. He explains that this new strength caused more alien civilizations to notice them. The principal tells Chengdu that they must develop their strength quickly to become a tough target before the aliens discover the truth about human weakness. Chengdu looks shocked and realizes that humanity is actually very weak and not the medium-strength civilization the media claims they are. The principal looks at Chengdu and asks if he remembers the incident where a giant sneak attacked Lake West City. Chengdu remembers the news from that day. He says the giant fell from the sky and killed hundreds of thousands of people. He thought the monster was just passing by the planet. The principal asks what Chengdu would think if that giant was actually just food for an alien race. Chengdu sweats and repeats the word food in disbelief. The principal explains that the giant bird flew high above and accidentally dropped its food. He asks Chengdu if he still thinks humanity is strong, considering a single piece of dropped food caused so much death and destruction. Chengdu thinks about the high martial arts civilization. He believed there were many talented fighters, so his own power would not make a difference. He only wanted to protect his family. Now he realizes their entire civilization could be destroyed at any moment. Chengdu clenches his fist tightly. He loudly declares that he will participate in the Black Dragon Martial Arts University assessment next month. The principal smiles kindly while standing in the barren wasteland. The principal tells Chengdu that he does not need to participate. Chengdu looks down at his wrist. His smartwatch glows with blue light. A system screen appears. It displays an A-class contract after he refused the recruiters to their faces. The principal crosses his arms and explains that every A-class contract is given to a future soaring martial artist. He says Killin University is not as good at recruiting top talents as the other two famous schools. He notes that if Chengdu went to Black Dragon University, he would likely only receive a B-class contract. The principal says he reviewed the document. The recruiters changed the terms to fit Chengdu's specific needs. They removed the funding for martial arts and mental power. Instead, they greatly increased the amount of CI blood medicine. They want to give Chengdu a major boost to his life intensity before the college entrance exam. The principal tells Chengdu that his family cannot move to the first biosphere. Instead, they can relocate to Cyber City. He explains that the armed forces there are very strong, and if Cyber City falls, the entire 7th biosphere will be destroyed. Chengdu states that this outcome is good because it guarantees his family's safety and allows him to focus on his training. The principal explains why citizens cannot move freely between biospheres. He says that if people could leave dangerous areas, it would cause massive population imbalances, ruin industries, and spread panic everywhere. The system screen suddenly appears. It shows that Chengdu has been awarded 10 million in chi blood medicine. Chengdu opens his eyes and mouth wide in complete shock. He yells the number out loud. The principal coughs awkwardly. He tells Chengdu that 10 million is not a massive amount, but it is still a lot of money. Chengdu sweats and thinks to himself that the amount is actually huge. He realizes his past poverty limited his imagination. Chengdu stands calmly and thanks the principal for his help. The principal tells Chengdu to thank Teacher Ling instead. He explains that Teacher Ling works selflessly behind the scenes to help him. Teacher Ling places his hand on Chengdu's shoulder. He explains that he and Teacher Yadai are members of the City Defense Corps. They are preparing for a patrol mission outside the biosphere to watch for alien dangers, and he invites Chengdu to observe them. The principal explains Teacher Yadai's abilities. He states that she is using a rare mental power martial art that overlays her mental power onto an opponent's attacks. The principal states that Teacher Ling has a life intensity of level 19. He explains that Teacher Ling is incredibly powerful, but they must still be careful when facing alien civilizations. Chengdu observes Teacher Ling and notes that his weapon is a short sword. Chengdu then asks the principal what Teacher Yadai's second ability is. The principal tells Chengdu that a martial artist's skills are a strict secret, so she will not reveal everything. Teacher Ling smiles and agrees. At night, a helicopter flies over the school buildings. The principal points his finger directly at Chengdu. He warns Chengdu about a question on the upcoming school exam. He strictly orders Chengdu not to write the real truth about why humanity is divided into 9 biospheres. He tells him to write the fake answer provided in the official textbooks instead. Chengdu smiles nervously with a sweat drop on his face. He agrees and says he is not stupid. Chengdu walks alone under the starry night sky. He announces his plan to use a marrow cleansing pill right now so he can raise his life intensity to level 6.